Chapter 221. The basilisk was finally tamed, and Yang Tian's mind was completely relaxed. Only then did he have the mood to take a closer look at the surrounding scenery. It must be said that except for the empty hall, there was nothing. In fact, Yang Tian was a little confused when he read the original novel. Salazar Slytherin was one of the big four. Regardless of his merits and demerits, you didn't really build a chamber of secrets just to raise a basilisk, kill Muggle wizards, and purify Hogwarts, right? Didn't you think of leaving some inheritance or treasures for your heirs? Or were these things already taken away by Voldemort back then? With this question in mind, Yang Tian started chatting with the newly captured snake monster in snake dialect. "What's your name?" Yang Tian tried to get closer. "Master, my name is Galanaya." The basilisk also seemed very cooperative. "Wow, what a nice name. Was it given to you by Salazar Slytherin?" Yang Tian asked in amazement. He kept muttering in his heart, could it be that basilisks also have male and female? "Yes, the old master has always called me that since Galanaya became conscious." The basilisk reminisced. "So, Galanaya, does this secret room have any other secrets?" Yang Tian asked pointedly. "Of course, my master." The basilisk had been completely tamed by Yang Tian, so it naturally answered every question. "There is another level in this secret room. Only those who have passed the verification of the old master can enter." As expected, Yang Tian was delighted. "I knew it, building such a huge palace to raise a snake monster, what a fuss. Tell me quickly, what level is it?" Yang Tian asked anxiously. Reporting to the master, "This is just a very simple blood verification level. Drop a drop of blood of the descendant of Slytherin into each eye of the old master's statue, and you can enter." The basilisk answered the question faithfully. Yang Tian felt a chill in his heart when he heard this. "So, Voldemort has already been in there. Who is Voldemort?" The basilisk asked puzzledly. Yang Tian was stunned, and quickly asked, "Who has entered this secret room?" "Since the chamber was built, besides the old master and you, only a young man about 50 years ago has entered," the basilisk explained. "That's not right." Yang Tian was even more puzzled after hearing this. That young man should be a member of the Gaunt family, right? Strictly speaking, he is a descendant of Slytherin, right? "That's right." The basilisk nodded humanely and said, "But he is a shame to Slytherin. He is not a pure blood. For the great Salazar Slytherin, this is unforgivable. I'll go." Yang Tian was really confused this time, but you still followed his instructions. "Master, I am not following his orders, but the orders of the old master. The relationship between the young man and I is at most a partnership." "You know a lot." Yang Tian said speechlessly. "Then do you know what will happen after you pass this level?" "I'm sorry, master, the old master didn't tell me this." The basilisk explained. "I only know that before the old master left Hogwarts, he spent most of his time in the secret room behind the level." Hearing the words of the basilisk, Yang Tian was really tempted. But how to deal with the blood of the descendants of Slytherin? The Gaunt family seemed to have completely disappeared. Even Voldemort was not qualified. Where could he find qualified blood? Suddenly, Yang Tian's heart moved. There was nearly a layer of blood in his suitcase, but he didn't know if there was anything that met the requirements. "Do it as soon as you think of it." Yang Tian quickly asked the intelligent brain, "Intelligent brain, help me check whether there is pure blood from the Gaunt family in the blood samples in the suitcase." The cold mechanical voice of the intelligent computer sounded immediately. "The blood bank has the blood of Marvolo Gaunt and Mara P. Gaunt. It really is." Yang Tian was overjoyed and quickly took the suitcase out of the white jade ring. After opening the suitcase, he rushed in. After a while, he ran back carefully holding 2 reagent bottles. Wow, there was only 1 drop in each reagent bottle, just show how stingy Yang Tian is. The next operation was not complicated. He just sat on the somersault cloud and put a drop of blood in each eye, just right. After doing all this, Yang Tian watched with great anticipation what would happen next. Sure enough, when the blood completely seeped into the statue's eyes, a creaking sound of gears suddenly came from below the hall, and the huge statue slowly turned to the wall behind it along with the sound of gears. Finally, when the statue was completely facing the wall, the creaking sound stopped abruptly. Yang Tian had been closely following the development of the situation, and he really didn't understand the meaning of this mechanism. But in the next moment, something strange happened. The statue of Salazar Slytherin seemed to have suddenly been worn down by the years, and was losing its original luster at a speed visible to the naked eye. Not only that, as time went by, the traces of time became more and more obvious on it, and tiny cracks began to spread, interweaving like a spider web. At first, these cracks were just tiny flaws and were not noticeable. But soon, they gradually expanded and even spread to the whole body. Yang Tian found it hard to imagine what kind of power could cause the statue to become like this in just a moment. But it wasn't over yet. The next moment, the surface of the statue began to peel off, and tiny pieces fell off quietly, and its structure became fragile. Finally, when it reached a certain critical point, more pieces fell off one after another, and the statue seemed unable to bear its own weight. Finally, it collapsed with a loud bang, smoke and dust rose up, and the original statue was shattered into pieces on the ground. Is this the end? Yang Tian couldn't believe his eyes. He even suspected that the 2 drops of blood he dropped were fake and shoddy products. Otherwise, how could such serious consequences be caused? But when the smoke and dust completely dissipated, Yang Tian was dumbfounded again. He saw a brand new statue standing on the land full of debris, and this statue seemed to be more vital than before. However, this statue was only 1/3 of the height of the original statue. Of course, this statue is also an image of an old man, but there is no sense of being old and frail or dying at all. From Yang Tian's perspective, the old man was not really handsome. But he was tall and slender, with an upright posture, his dark grey hair was neat and orderly, showing his rigor and self-discipline, his eyes were sharp, and his lips were thin and tightly closed, which blended together and revealed a restrained and mysterious temperament. Just by staring at the statue, Yang seemed to be able to understand its qualities, wisdom, ambition and ruthlessness, which were consistent with the characteristics of Slytherin House. Maybe it's a younger Salazar? Before he could further observe the statue, the sound of gears turning sounded again, and this time it was more frequent and seemed more complicated. However, the stone wall opposite the new Slytherin statue was split into 2 parts in the middle again, and then slowly moved to both sides until a huge entrance as high as the new statue was formed. Looking at the scene in front of me now, the picture is completely different. It feels as if Slytherin is proudly showing the scene inside the door to his descendants, showing his ambition. I have to say, it is a masterpiece. However, Yang Tian was in no mood to appreciate it all. He could not wait to rush into the door, wanting to see what the famous Salazar Slytherin had left for his descendants. Chapter 222. Yang Tian rushed into the room eagerly, but was attracted by the strange scene in front of him. This room was almost the same size as the hall outside. But the difference was that the whole room was wrapped in a touch of flowing light. Although I don't know what this did, it was really beautiful. Moreover, it was visible to the naked eye that this huge space was divided into several areas by various colored light curtains, but due to the obstruction of the light curtains, Yang Tian could not see what was inside. The only thing that was visible was a huge stone platform in the center of the room. Yang Tian walked forward thoughtfully, and sure enough, a piece of parchment was on the stone platform. After just a quick glance, Yang Tian knew what was going on. This was a secret room instruction manual. According to the manual, the entire room was divided into 6 areas: experimental area, book collection area, material area, treasure area, training area, and rest area. This experimental area, as the name suggests, is used to conduct various magic experiments. Yang Tian followed the map and entered it, and a mysterious atmosphere came over him. This area had obviously been expanded by the traceless extension charm, and the space was quite large. But what really impressed people was the strange light flickering on the walls and the stones with magic runes laid out in an orderly manner on the ground. Yang Tian couldn't understand the arrangement and function of these magic runes for a moment, but the parchment clearly stated, the function of the magic runes was to strengthen and purify, to prevent explosions, the escape of toxic gases, etc. The lab table was undoubtedly the core of the area. On the lab table, which took up most of the space, were placed various mysterious lab instruments. Putting aside other things, just looking at the fine workmanship and the exquisite materials, one could tell that they were very valuable. At the same time, the bottles and jars on the lab table were filled with colorful liquids, some of which were still bubbling and emitting a pungent smell. It was hard for Yang Tian to believe that this place had been deserted for thousands of years. The manual also gave a detailed introduction to the functions of the experimental area. This was a comprehensive experimental area that could be used for various experiments such as potions, alchemy, and blood. On the shelves along the walls, Countless rolls of parchment were neatly placed, which were used to record the research results and related data of various experiments. The sheer number of them also made Yang Tian smack his lips. The impression Yang Tian had of the book collection area was classical and luxurious. On the huge oak bookcases, patterns of flowers, birds, mountains, and landscapes made of materials such as chalcedony, agate, and colored glaze could be seen everywhere. The air was filled with the faint scent of books, which made people feel peaceful and satisfied. In short, it was very classy. However, there are some shortcomings. Although the book collection area has been expanded by the traceless extension spell, the space is really not big. Even so, there are only dozens of bookshelves in the entire reading area, and half of them are empty. The only consolation is that every book displayed on the bookshelf is extremely rare. At least, Yang Tian has not seen any of them in the huge Hogwarts library. The most thoughtful thing is that there is a comfortable sofa and a small coffee table in the corner of the book collection area, where people can relax and immerse themselves in the world of books. Salazar seems to have considered the utmost for his disciples. As for the material section, it was also very shocking. The densely packed shelves were filled with all kinds of strange materials, like a hodgepodge. There were countless ores, metals, herbs, rare potion materials, etc., especially the two large shelves on the side, which were filled with various bottles and jars, containing colorful powders and liquids, and the spells and symbols on the labels were confusing. It seemed that there was still a lot worth studying in this material section. Although Yang Tian's suitcase also has a large amount of inventory, even more than what is stored here. But compared with the materials on these shelves, they are less rare and less vintage. Compared to other areas, the treasure area is much more plain and unpretentious without so many fancy things. In this area, we can only see piles of gold galleons lying alone on the ground, which looks very much like the vault in Gringotts. Not only that, there were several quaint large boxes next to the Golden Garin Mountain. Yang Tian curiously opened them and found that one of the boxes was filled with colorful magic gems, another box was filled with various alchemical equipment, and in addition, some magic relics of unknown origin and unknown function filled the remaining boxes. Although Yang Tian did not check them one by one due to time constraints, he still clearly felt Salazar's dedication. The main feature of this treasure area is a rich and inhumane. Speaking of which, the training area was the area that surprised Yang Tian the most. He originally thought that this ordinary training ground would be similar to the training ground provided by the Room of Requirement. Who knew that there would be a world of difference? This training ground can not only build external environments such as terrain and weather according to the requirements of trainees, but also has 30 land-based training puppets and 20 aerial training puppets. What's even more outrageous is that these puppets that have mastered alchemy can not only launch physical attacks, but can even imitate wizards to launch many magical attacks. Training here will definitely achieve twice the result with half the effort. He even had a feeling that no one could build such a training ground now, and it was most likely a product of magical ruins. Yang Tian finally came to the rest area, thinking that this was just a place for people to rest and there would be no new discoveries. But he was wrong. Salazar Slytherin placed his most important thing here, which was Salazar's notebook. This notebook was a review of his life in his later years, carrying Salazar's research ideas and survival philosophy. Yang Tian read the notebook carefully and soon learned about Salazar's life. It was only at this moment that he had a clear understanding of Salazar. Although Salazar had made great achievements in many fields throughout his life, such as legilimency, black magic, potions, etc., what he valued most and was most proud of was his research on bloodline. He was a supporter of pure blood supremacy in the Middle Ages, and a wizard who had truly witnessed the power of blood magic. He watched bloodlines grow from strong to weak, and then to decline. He watched the hostility and extermination of declining wizards by Muggles during that special period. He felt a deep sense of crisis. He even predicted in his notes that human nature is greedy, and when others have abilities that you don't have, and you are strong enough, you will make the following choices, either plunder or enslave. Therefore, if the wizard's strength continued to decline as their bloodline became thinner, they would eventually be on the road to complete destruction, and the ones who destroyed the wizards would inevitably be the Muggles. This was also the reason why he strongly opposed Hogwarts recruiting Muggle wizards. At the same time, he also firmly believed that only by regaining the lost power in his bloodline could the wizard become strong again and not fear any enemy. To this end, he did a lot of blood research. The core idea of Salazar's bloodline research is that the so-called pursuit of blood purity is more like a pursuit of the true meaning of magic, or an exploration of the essence of magic. According to his idea, the abilities acquired by the first generation of pure blood wizards were of a higher level and pure and flawless. However, they had no way to pass these abilities on to the next generation. Therefore, they could only pass on some of their abilities to the next generation by sacrificing bloodline reproduction. If you want to infer the blood of your ancestors from the blood of your descendants, you can't just focus on the purity of the blood, you should also understand the nature of the lost ability. It has to be said that Salazar is a very charismatic person. His thoughts and memories fascinate Yang Tian. Yang Tian even forgot to use the eagle eyes and book dance spells. He just carefully flipped through the pages, feeling them bit by bit. When Yang Tian finally got out of his notebook, it was already 5 in the morning. He quickly packed up everything and prepared to leave. Before leaving, he found a lifelike snake bracelet on his wrist, which was the special ability given to the snake monster by the beast taming ring. Chapter 223. In the next few days, when Yang Tian had nothing to do, he would run to the secret room, read Salazar's notes, scan books, scan experimental data. He was like a possessed person. Of course, he could not escape the entanglement of experts and professors from other disciplines. Fortunately, transfiguration is on the right track, and experts have begun to study transfiguration on Boggart. Obviously, this special dark creature that can transform has aroused great interest among experts. Yang Tian secretly praised the expert's choice. After all, this was a creature he had never seen before. But he did not use the intelligent brain to participate in the analysis. After all, the threads of the intelligent brain were extremely precious and could not be used for such things. If the experts can really make a breakthrough, he can join in and get twice the result with half the effort, but if there is really no progress, he will never waste time for no reason. Of course, the experts were not just focused on research, they had promised Professor McGonagall to teach Yang Tian transfiguration, and they could not break their promise when the time came. So, after the experts' test, Yang Tian focused on the advanced species analysis of cross-species transfiguration. Originally, learning this part of the content requires accumulation over time, but these experts have a lot of practical operations, data, and results. They passed on their most precious experience to Yang Tian, which made his transformation skills advance by leaps and bounds. If not, how could Yang Tian use transfiguration to such a terrifying degree in the secret room? He even had a feeling that if he continued to study at this pace, he should be able to start learning human transfiguration soon. The same is true for astronomy on the other hand. Although Yang Tian cannot visualize more constellations due to the season and geographical location, this does not prevent many astronomy experts from teaching this star of hope their lifelong experience. As for astronomical research, the experts did not rush to ask Yang Tian to develop new topics. Instead, they chose to proceed step by step, trying to find more laws in Yang Tian's previous deductions. Although this approach seems to be slower, it has laid a solid foundation for the revival of astronomy. In contrast, Professor Sprout was very unhappy. Although Yang Tian also had many wonderful ideas in herbology, the new things he and Neville came up with were good, but they were still far from leading the trend. After all, herbology was an important pillar of the development of potions, and there were many people studying it, and the essence of herbology was the growth of plants, and its improvement effect was unlikely to have a subversive breakthrough. Therefore, although Hogwarts herbology has attracted much attention, it has not yet reached the point of establishing a new school. Naturally, there will not be experts who will chase Hogwarts to study like the other two subjects. Finally, there is the study group. The 9-member group is still secretly conducting practical nightmare training on their own, but the rest of the time, these new members, including the Weasley brothers, have been working together with the old members. Everyone is getting along more and more harmoniously, and I believe that it won't be long before the barriers are eliminated. With the situation looking so good, Dumbledore finally found Yang Tian. Go, child. Nicholas Flamel is very determined and I can't persuade him. It seems you have to try it yourself. Dumbledore's voice was a little low. Yang Tian was thoughtful after hearing this, but he didn't say much, and followed Dumbledore. 51 Rue Montmorency, Marais, Paris. It was late at night and there were few people on the street. But at this moment, 2 dusty figures, one big and one small, knocked on the door of this ancient building. As soon as the knock on the door fell, the wooden door slowly opened, and a robot-like creature with tracks on its lower body bowed and said, "The master knows that you two are coming, so he asked me to greet you here. Please come in." Yang Tian was stunned when he saw the creature in front of him. How come the image of this guy who opened the door was exactly the same as the sci-fi movie Thunderbolt 5 that he had seen in his previous life? By the way, does Nicholas Flamel also watch Muggle movies? Before Yang Tian could think about it, Dumbledore pulled her into the door. The scenery inside the door was even more endless. Yang Tian only took a quick look and saw a group of thumb-sized alchemical creatures sweeping the dust on the ground. An alchemical creature like a flying bird was carrying books back to the bookshelf, and a cat-shaped alchemical creature was fighting fiercely with a ball of yarn. For the first time, Yang Tian felt that his eyes were not enough. Nicholas Flamel and his wife Pernell Flamel walked slowly up to the two men, and looking at their shaky postures, it seemed that they would fall down at the slightest touch. They greeted Dumbledore enthusiastically, but their eyes turned curiously to this handsome little guy. After a round of introductions and greetings, the two sides took their seats as host and guest. After the apron-wearing Thunderbolt No. 5 skillfully brewed coffee for everyone present, the topic officially began. "Little guy, I heard from Dumbledore that you wanted to come and persuade me in person." Nicholas Flamel said straight to the point with a smile. Hearing this, Yang Tian, who was originally drinking coffee leisurely, suddenly stood up and rushed to Nick Flamel in 2 steps. He hugged Nick's thigh excitedly but gently and cried, "Teacher, you can't close the growth path of an unparalleled genius in the magic world because of your immature idea." Puff! Nicole Flamel, who was drinking coffee, spit out his coffee. Pernell Flamel next to him also spit out his coffee. They had thought of millions of ways to start Yang Tian's speech, but they had never thought of such an unexpected way of expression. "It's just a little bit shameless. Besides, what did I promise? Why did he even call the teacher?" But Yang Tian was unaware of this. He continued to speak earnestly. "Teacher, I have an unparalleled memory, comprehension, and calculation ability. Let me put it this way, I can read at least 200 books in an hour, and remember them exactly. Not only that, my knowledge is very broad. I have read all the books in the Hogwarts library except for the Forbidden Area. Although I don't know much about alchemy, from what I have seen, erudition is a basic condition. My creativity is even more unparalleled. At least in astronomy, transfiguration, and herbology, I have achieved impressive results." Yang Tian kept praising himself in various ways for more than 10 minutes, without repeating himself. It seemed that if Nicholas Flamel did not accept Yang Tian as a student, he would have committed an unforgivable crime. Dumbledore was numb, Nicholas Flamel was numb, Pernell Flamel was numb, and the corners of their mouths twitched involuntarily. Chapter 224. Nicholas Flamel looked at Dumbledore with a puzzled look, as if to ask, "Who kind of person are you recommending to me?" Dumbledore's face turned red, but after thinking for a while, he said seriously, "Although the child's statement is a bit exaggerated, it must be said that what he said is indeed the truth." Upon hearing this, Nicholas Flamel and his wife both showed incredible expressions. However, when Nicholas Flamel saw that Yang Tian seemed to want to continue talking, he finally spoke helplessly, "My child, although you are excellent enough, I have to say that I am a little tired of the life in front of me. It is monotonous, boring, and unoriginal. We have lived long enough, we have seen everything we should see, and we have experienced everything we should experience. No, 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 teacher. People are eager to live, no matter how long they live. The reason why they are tired of living can only be because the quality of life is not high." Yang Tian said seriously, "Also, you said that you have seen everything you should see and experienced everything you should experience. I don't agree with these words. After all, you haven't seen anyone who has lived for hundreds of years and can still maintain vigorous vitality, right? He can fight and resist, and he is very tough." Nicholas Flamel frowned and said with a hint of dissatisfaction, "You speak as if you have seen it before." "Of course I have." Yang Tian said confidently, "Not only have I seen it, Professor Dumbledore has also seen it. If you and your teacher's wife have the same vitality and vigor as that man, then I really don't understand your motive for seeking death. I wonder, wouldn't it be nice to ride a flying broom to participate in a Quidditch game?" Nicholas Flamel looked at Dumbledore in astonishment, waiting for his old friend to give him an answer. Dumbledore looked at Yang Tian helplessly, and then said, "It is true that there is such a thing. I have no intention of concealing it. But my friend, have you forgotten your reaction when I brought up this topic in this living room a few days ago? You told me righteously that you never liked narrative methods such as maybe and perhaps, and asked me not to talk about these vague things." Before the slightly embarrassed Nicholas Flamel could speak, Yang Tian took out a few video records from the white jade ring and said, these two people, one is called Alger, the other, his name is unknown. They appeared in. Yang Tian introduced the period when the two people appeared in detail, using video records as evidence. So, this is not something imaginary, but something that really happened. Yang Tian said confidently, of course, I can understand the teacher's actions. I think it may be that the teacher finds it too difficult to accept the fact that his alchemy or the craftsmanship of the Philosopher's Stone has been surpassed by others. What do you mean by that? Nicholas Flamel's voice suddenly rose an octave. Do you think they obtained all this through the Philosopher's Stone or alchemy? What else? After all, apart from the legend of the Philosopher's Stone and the elixir of life, is there any other means of immortality in the entire magical world? I think that those people's Philosopher's Stone manufacturing technology should have made a huge breakthrough, which can not only prolong life, but also maintain vitality, and can charge and kill, and your Philosopher's Stone manufacturing technology undoubtedly still has huge flaws. Although it can prolong life, it overdraws the body. Yang Tian concluded decisively. In fact, Yang Tian certainly didn't know whether this was true or not, but that didn't stop him from saying so to arouse Nicholas Flamel's fighting spirit. Impossible. I've been immersed in alchemy for hundreds of years, and I've never heard of the existence of a stronger Philosopher's Stone. Nicholas Flamel became even more agitated. Having lived for so long, it was difficult for him to let trivial matters break his inner peace, but Yang Tian did it. You haven't seen anyone who has lived that long and still maintained his vitality, right? Yang Tian was not moved at all and continued to attack. Admit it, teacher, it's not that difficult to admit that others are excellent. Face death with an imperfect life answer sheet. Although it's a bit aggrieved and unwilling, I don't think it's something that's too difficult to accept. Just bear it, nothing else matters. Yang Tian, you shouldn't do this. Dumbledore said helplessly and seriously. Professor, I'm just stating a fact. Yang Tian still refused to give in and said, in fact, there are some things I shouldn't say, even if children speak without restraint. To be a warrior or a coward, that is a question. Whether to move forward without hesitation like a warrior, or to compromise like a coward and die with a clear conscience, can only be decided by yourself. Maybe you haven't reached our age yet. After all, you have fulfilled your destiny in this world. It's not a bad thing to change your environment and start a new journey. Dumbledore seemed to be drawn into some kind of emotion. Haha, a good life is called a journey, and a bad life is called survival. Fate is just a compromise and concession of the weak to an unfinished cause. Only the truly strong will always stand on top of the world, breaking through one destinies after another, and completing one mission after another. Even if life comes to an end in the end, it is definitely not one's own subjective will. Yang Tian retorted. Little guy, you are really eloquent and full of energy. Dumbledore seemed to be reminiscing, or trying to convince himself. He seemed to have forgotten the purpose of this trip. However, some people want to die, just because the current world cannot make up for their regrets. Perhaps a new journey will bring different scenery and help them find what they have lost. If regrets cannot be made up in the current world, why are you so sure that going to an unknown world will be able to make up for them? Yang Tianyi said meaningfully. When you have spent your whole life trying and trying your best, but only to verify some false rumors, what will you choose? Dumbledore seemed a little uneasy. Then I will find a way to make my life longer and keep trying with all my heart. Maybe next time, I will succeed. There is always a glimmer of hope in Yang Tian's eyes. Dumbledore and Nicholas Flamel were both silent. Perhaps this is what young people are like. After a long silence, Nicholas Flamel finally spoke, well, boy, you just boasted that you are unique, so let me see your strength and see if you are really qualified to be my student. Yang Tian was overjoyed when he heard this. The unyielding expression on his face disappeared instantly, and he became a polite and obedient boy again. Seeing this, Nicholas Flamel said with a smile, don't play nice in front of me. He casually ordered the alchemy servant to take out 15 books, and then continued, memorize all the contents. Is one night enough? Yang Tian smiled and said, if it weren't for etiquette considerations, I would definitely reply to you, who are you looking down on? After saying that, he arranged all the books in order, and the next moment, Eagle Eyes and Book Dance spell. In just 5 minutes, Yang Tian said confidently, it's ready. Okay? Are you kidding me? How could Nicholas Flamel believe such a ridiculous answer? So, next, the adult and the child started the extreme question and answer game. The result was naturally without a doubt, Yang Tian 1. But Dumbledore's attention was on the spell Yang Tian had just cast. What is the name of the magic you cast to make an eagle fly into the sky while you were reading? Principal, you are talking about the eagle eye spell, right? Yang Tian asked uncertainly. This spell can take in all the scenery covered by the eagle eye. It is a spell I created for the convenience of reading books. Creating your own spell? Looking at this handsome 11-year-old boy, the three old men all fell into deep thought. After a long wait, Nicholas Flamel finally said, "Well, I think I can go to Hogwarts with Pernell for a while. But I hope you won't let me down." Yang Tian said happily, "Teacher, don't worry, I promise that once you enter Hogwarts, you will never want to commit suicide again." Chapter 225. Nicholas Flamel is coming. This news swept the entire Hogwarts like a whirlwind. It must be said that the prestige of this legendary alchemist exceeded everyone's imagination. Almost all students and professors wanted to get close to him, and even many celebrities in the British wizarding world asked Dumbledore to see him. But unfortunately, Nicholas Flamel had no intention of meeting the public. Since following Dumbledore to Hogwarts, apart from asking Yang Tian to read alchemy books according to the study plan he arranged, and frequently testing Yang Tian's homework, he spent all the rest of his time locked up in the laboratory prepared for him by the school. Nicholas Flamel's actions also made his wife Pernell Flamel very angry. After all, about 10 years ago, her husband had not been very keen on these alchemical experiments, but spent most of his time with her day and night. But what was going on now? Because of this reason, she was even full of resentment towards her husband's new disciples, and she never had a good face every time she saw Yang Tian. But who is Yang Tian? He is a smart person, and he discovered the mystery after just a little thought. However, he was not panicked at all, but solved the problem according to his own established plan. Yang Tian asked his grandfather to help buy Chinese herbs based on the recipe in his memory. He then used his intelligent brain to repeatedly deduce and simulate. After spending about 10 days, he finally refined the first batch of elixirs in his life, the rejuvenation pill. The ingredients of this kind of medicine are quite ordinary. Except for the relatively rare dragon vein grass and Andrographis paniculata, the others are common Chinese herbs. But such ordinary herbs combined together can produce magical effects and restore the body's vitality to a small extent. When Nicholas Flamel and his wife swallowed the elixir sent by Yang Tianjing with doubt, they even felt tears welling up in their eyes when they felt their almost dried-up bodies regain a little vitality. This feeling of being almost withered and suddenly being injected with a spring of fresh water is really fascinating. Western potions were not without potions that could restore vitality, and the couple had taken many of them. Perhaps because they had taken too many, these potions were no longer effective in the end. But for some reason, this magical oriental medicine brought them a surprise. What made them even more delighted was that the new disciple actually made a bold statement: "This is just the beginning. As he conducts in-depth research, more elixirs that can restore vitality will be produced. Don't believe it? Just wait and see." "So, teacher, what you said, I've seen everything I should have seen, is obviously wrong. The world is so big, and you haven't seen enough. It's only been 600 years, so what?" Seeing the little guy arrogantly and proudly saying a series of harsh words and running away happily, the couple couldn't help but laugh. At that moment, they seemed to have become much younger. In the following days, Pernell Flamel, who had regained a little bit of vitality, finally found her former feelings. Alchemy was also her specialty, and she was overwhelmed when she recalled the days when she and her husband studied alchemy together when they were young, and the husband sang and the wife followed his lead. Perhaps, joining the research on the Philosopher's Stone at the right time is also a good choice. On Yang Tian's side, along with the Chinese herbs he purchased, there was also a magic weapon he had been longing for, the soul jade. Speaking of this soul jade, it is not used to nourish souls. It is a treasure passed down by the Yang family to deal with ghosts. It is a purgatory specially for ghosts to live in. Its real name is Soul Prison. It is only because of its ordinary appearance but powerful functions that it is claimed to be soul jade to deceive people. As soon as he got the soul jade, Yang Tian couldn't wait to hide in the secret room and study this small jade token with all his concentration. According to the instructions in the letter, Yang Tian dripped his blood onto the soul jade. However, the blood was slowly absorbed by the soul jade and eventually disappeared without a trace. The soul jade also emitted a faint light. He did not dare to neglect it and quickly pressed the soul jade on his forehead. In an instant, the soul jade began to fade and entered Yang Tian's mind in the form of light and shadow. At the same time, a soul thread closely connected the soul jade and Yang Tian's soul together. It's done! He shouted excitedly. After calming himself down, Yang Tian disappeared from the spot with a thought. The next moment, he had stepped into the soul prison. The entire soul prison was filled with a dark and gloomy scene. The cold stone walls emitted a cold light, and the ground was filled with a biting cold. Strange soul fragments were wandering around, and from time to time they let out shrill screams, which made people shudder. The narrow and winding passage was like a maze, with rows of cells on both sides of the passage. The air was filled with a thick smell of death. Every step one took, one could feel the oppression from hell. In the deepest part of the soul prison, there were old torture instruments, stained with blood and sin. Faintly, one could still hear the painful howlings of the tortured ghosts of the past, as if they were telling the horror of this space. That was the most terrifying torture area in the entire soul prison. Above the entire soul prison, there are countless vengeful spirits with twisted faces hanging. They have long lost their independent consciousness, and only endless resentment remains in their souls. In such an environment, even the strongest people will feel fear and despair. Yang Tian took many detours and came to an inconspicuous cell. Then, he took out the soul-binding talisman, crushed it, and threw it into the cell. The next moment, black fog rose and Voldemort's soul flashed in the cell. The Dark Lord was overjoyed to find that he had finally broken free. He rushed to every corner of the cell frantically, trying to find a way to escape. Unfortunately, his efforts were in vain. After repeated collisions, Voldemort finally calmed down and finally noticed the child outside the cell, whom he wished to grind to dust. "Boy, what is this place? What do you want to do?" he asked in a hateful voice. It was not that the Dark Lord was curious, but that this hellhole brought too much pressure to him, a kind of suppression like a natural enemy. "Oh, does the great Dark Lord have so many questions that need to be answered? Then what kind of information will you exchange with me?" Yang Tian asked curiously. However, Yang Tian's question was met with Voldemort's silence. It was obvious that the Dark Lord was in a bad mood and he didn't want to make any deal with this damn kid. However, Yang Tian was not in a hurry. Of course, he would not resort to torture for the time being. After all, he had the soul prison in his hands, and there was still a long time to come, and the day when the Dark Lord would be displayed to the public was not far away. No matter what, he had to show everyone a healthy and unaware soul of Voldemort, right? As for what happens after the public display, I'm sorry, doesn't it all depend on Yang Tian's mood? Chapter 226. Early April 1992, Ministry of Magic. Today is a memorable day, and it is destined to be a grand ceremony. Early in the morning, almost all the students of Hogwarts dressed in their formal attire and set off for the Ministry of Magic under the guidance of professors and experts. At the same time, many wizards from all over the UK also gathered at the Ministry of Magic one day in advance. After waiting for so long, everyone really wanted to know whether the report in the Daily Prophet was true. At the same time, everyone wanted to see the miserable appearance of the Dark Lord who had been reduced to a spirit and arrested. As a result, many people in strange clothes suddenly poured into the Whitehall area of London. They acted recklessly and seemed to take everything around them lightly. What was even more outrageous was that a long line formed outside a red telephone booth next to Whitehall. There was no other way, as this was the only entrance to the Ministry of Magic. But such a scene also made people wonder, is it so difficult to make a phone call now? Fortunately, the Ministry of Magic had anticipated today's situation, and they sent a large number of staff to maintain order and deal with the aftermath. For a while, the magical brilliance of the forgetfulness charm and the Muggle exorcism charm flashed from time to time. After Yang Tian followed the crowd into the Ministry of Magic, he and his 8 friends were arranged to stay in a separate reception room. The main group entered a large viewing hall one after another. This hall was too large and had only been used a few times since it was built. This time it was put to good use. Just when the friends were taking a break and chatting, Fudge and Scrimgeour pushed the door open. "Hey, little guys, is this your first time at the Ministry of Magic? How do you feel?" Fudge asked with a smile on his face. "Hello Minister Fudge. Feels good. It's definitely my first time here." The little ones were flattered by the Minister of Magic's enthusiasm. They all responded and expressed their true feelings. After chatting for a while, Fudge said to Yang Tian in a serious tone, "Have you arranged the personnel? In such an important occasion, the soul itself cannot have any accidents." "Minister, rest assured. Everyone entered with my grandfather. You can communicate with my grandfather before the ceremony begins to ensure that everything goes well. Yang Tian replied politely. However, compared to Voldemort's soul itself, you should be more worried about the unwarranted intervention of external forces. If an individual or organization takes this opportunity to rescue Voldemort's soul, the consequences will be disastrous. I'm very relieved about this. Fudge patted Yang Tian's shoulder comfortingly and said, we are fully prepared. Everything is the best arrangement. Seeing that everything was ready, Fudge finally left with Scrimgeour in high spirits. Half an hour later, the commendation meeting finally began, and the 9-member team headed by Yang Tian was arranged to sit on the viewing platform. Even Yang Tian, who was in a complicated ceremony, did not pay attention to what Minister Fudge was saying, but naturally looked at the audience. Wow, there are so many familiar faces. Grandpa and Grandma, parents, Aunt Sophia, the nightmare people who have already obtained public identities, Green Grass father and daughter, the Zabanai alliance, the Yang family's Xiaolao, Cai Yulianjiu, etc. Yang Tian nodded to them one by one. The rest of the friends quickly found their family members who came to watch the ceremony from the crowd below, and they all waved to them excitedly. But at this time, Hermione, Zhangqiu, and the Paddle sisters showed regretful expressions. Their families were not present. Hermione and Zhangqiu's family members were all Muggles and could not attend such a ceremony, while the Paddle sisters' family members were far away in India. They really could not travel across the ocean to attend a grand ceremony, right? Fortunately, the friends were very attentive and whispered to comfort everyone. In fact, the entire ceremony was not as lengthy as one might imagine. First, Scrimgeour took the stage to give a detailed and objective report on the process of investigating the case, then Minister Fudge and Dumbledore took the stage to speak and characterize the incident, and finally, there was a large-scale commendation ceremony. More than a dozen people came out of the Ministry of Magic to receive promotions and gold galleons. During this period, Yang Tian was surprised to see Humbert and Brayden. These 2 Nightmare members who had infiltrated the Ministry of Magic finally got promoted. Ever since these 2 people were arranged to enter the Ministry of Magic, it has been really difficult to move forward. The relationship between the Free Family and the Ministry of Magic is not close, and it is difficult for them to provide strong support, so they have been operating at a relatively low level in the Ministry of Magic. During this period, Yang Tian also secretly met with them twice, and was worried about the safety of the 2 comrades who had lived and died together. Yang Tian also discussed with the 2 the possibility of stopping the undercover plan, but they refused. They believed that as long as they worked hard, they would be able to gain a firm foothold in the Ministry of Magic and pass on important information to Nightmare. However, they were also fully prepared mentally, and everything was still a long way off. The turning point came after Madame Zabanai was conquered a while ago. Yang Tian handed over the subsequent development of his 2 comrades in the Ministry of Magic to this shrewd woman. It has only been a short time, and there has been such progress. Yang Tian couldn't help but smile with satisfaction. This scene naturally did not escape the eyes of the 3 women who had been staring at their master. They almost simultaneously revealed a relieved smile. After another round of noise, Dumbledore finally stood on the viewing platform again. The following rewards are the decisions made by the Ministry of Magic and the Wizengamot after careful discussion. Of course, some people may have some complaints about this resolution, thinking that the praise is a bit excessive. But I want to say that a group of teenage wizards did not compromise or fear when facing the Dark Lord, but chose to fight back without hesitation, using their limited magical knowledge, shrewd minds, and firm beliefs. They united as one, fought wits and courage, and finally defeated and arrested the Dark Lord. I believe that such deeds, no matter how much praise is given, it is not excessive. They are the hope of my British wizarding world and represent a fearless new generation. After a round of warm applause, Dumbledore continued, the Wizengamot awards Mr. Neville Longbottom an Order of Merlin, 3rd class. When Neville saw the gold medal with a white ribbon, he was stunned on the spot. The little guy, who was now quite confident, seemed to have suddenly become the helpless child again. He clumsily took the medal and looked at his grandmother in the audience. For a moment, he couldn't control the moisture in the corners of his eyes. The Wizengamot awards Ms. Hermione Granger the Order of Merlin, 3rd class. Dumbledore continued to announce. With Neville's preparation, Hermione's mood was much more stable. She excitedly stepped forward, also took the medal, and excitedly waved to the audience. Next, Zhangqiu, Penelope, Parvati, Padma, everyone showed their style while receiving the medals. Pansy and Daphne were probably the two with the most complicated feelings among all the winners, right? Thinking about their own situation and looking at their families who were proud of it, their already imprisoned souls seemed to have become more resolute in their complete submission. Were they really going to sink completely? Chapter 227. 8th Third Level Order of Merlin medals made the crowd envious. But Dumbledore did not give them any time to react. He shouted again. Next, I would like to introduce Yang Tian to you. I believe everyone has heard of this kid's past achievements. With his outstanding academic contributions in various fields, he was recently awarded the Order of Merlin, 3rd class by the Wisengamot. However, due to time constraints, the ceremony has not yet been held. Then the Dark Lord incident happened. After intense discussions between the Ministry of Magic and the Wisengamot, we finally decided to revoke Mr. Yang Tian's Order of Merlin, Class 3, and directly award him the Order of Merlin, Class 2. Wow! Upon hearing the news, thunderous applause and cheers instantly rang out from the audience. It seems that in the eyes of most wizards, this little guy deserves such praise. After the grand awarding ceremony, the next step was naturally the public display of Voldemort. Yang Tian did not hesitate, and with the help of old Xia, he pretended to make a series of hand seals on a blue talisman. In fact, he moved his mind and controlled Voldemort's cell in the Soul Prison, directly pulling it in front of the public, and the effect was exactly the same as that of the soul-binding talisman. When the spectators saw the terrifying Demon King who couldn't even be named really appear before their eyes, they all lowered their heads in fear. But when they looked at the miserable state of this guy now, they suddenly felt relieved, and the flames of hatred continued to grow in their hearts. In that dark era, who could really be spared? Finally! Oh my God, is this still the dreaded Voldemort? I don't know if he regrets the sins he committed before. Will the devil regret it? Stop kidding! Haha, seeing his miserable state right now, why am I so happy? Although it sounds like a whisper, how can the sound be heard so far away? Voldemort didn't care about the people around him pointing and talking. He just carefully scanned the faces of everyone present, as if he wanted to imprint them in his memory. Unfortunately, there were too many people. After a long silence, he finally spoke. My faithful believers, my servants who are still hiding among the crowd. Voldemort's icy voice resounded throughout the venue, don't worry, I will definitely return and stand before the world again with the glorious Death Eaters. What you have to do now is to hide yourselves, remember today's shame, and wait for the news of my return. By then, I will make all those who have laughed at us, taken advantage of us, and been our enemies, all pay a heavy price. The fierce words made many wizards present feel like they were falling into an icy cave, and some of them even started to chatter. How could the horrific memory that the Dark Lord brought to that era disappear so easily? But at this moment, a childish but calm voice rang out, Voldemort, I thought that after locking you up for such a long time, you would have become more or less aware of the situation. But now it seems that you are still so useless. It was Yang Tian who was speaking. He was extremely angry at this moment. It was a commendation meeting, and you, a prisoner, dared to be so arrogant? As soon as he thought of this, his mind moved, and a row of bloody steel nails in the deepest part of the soul prison in his mind suddenly lit up, and he pretended to take out a yellow talisman, and through the energy shield, pressed it directly on Voldemort's soul. The next moment, the 10 fingers of Voldemort's hands suddenly stretched straight and trembled, endless screams of "or" resounded throughout the venue. Yang Tian, you damn little devil! When I, the Dark Lord, return to the world, the first person I will kill will be you. Voldemort's resentful voice also echoed in the conference hall. Very good, I hope your endurance is as tough as your words. Old Xia stepped forward at the right time, stood in front of Yang Tian and pulled out the talisman. Yang Tian's heart trembled, and he immediately understood what old Xia meant. After all, he was only an 11-year-old child. Being too calm and fearless would inevitably make people defensive, even if the person he was facing was Voldemort. After thinking this through, Yang Tian felt warm in his heart. He stood aside expressionlessly, but his mind moved again, and he took out all 10 soul-refining nails from the interrogation area. When Xiaolao's talisman came into contact with Voldemort's soul, the soul-refining nails also entered Voldemort's soul on time. Then, it was visible to the naked eye that flames began to appear in various parts of Voldemort's body and soul, which was the burning of his soul. Ah! 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 Voldemort's screams no longer sounded like human voices. The heart-wrenching pain and trembling were unbearable even for the Dark Lord. He went completely crazy, asshole. Yang Tian, you little bastard. If you have the guts, let me out. Let's have a real fight. Do you dare? Ah! Ah! The continuous screams made the venue, which was dominated by fear just now, become weird. What the hell? Did I hear it wrong? The Dark Lord is challenging an 11-year-old. Could this be a fake Dark Lord? Why is he screaming so miserably? It seems that this Dark Lord is just like this. It is really hard to imagine that he was beaten by a child and cried loudly. Yes, yes. Look at him now. After he changed to an adult wizard, he is even more miserable. Is that a cry that a human can make? He is not a human being now, okay? He is a soul now. Haha, no soul screams so miserably, right? Similar words were constantly spread and discussed among the spectators. Fudge looked at everything in front of him with great satisfaction. He pretended to cough lightly and said loudly, "Does anyone have any questions about the Dark Lord's public display? If so, please raise them as soon as possible. Of course, if there are no questions, we will completely suppress the soul and body so that he can no longer cause trouble to our wizarding world." But at this moment, a deep voice came from the crowd. The Dark Lord just said that he would come again. I want to know, is this just a threat from him, or is it really possible? If the Dark Lord really comes again one day, will the Ministry of Magic bear the corresponding responsibility for today's remarks? Fudge was shocked when he heard this. The person who shouted this obviously had bad intentions and was very hostile. He hurriedly searched carefully, but there was nothing unusual. The aurors who were mixed in the crowd also began to search quietly, but unfortunately, they also found nothing. Fudge had no choice but to answer, "I can understand your concerns. But what I want to say is that the Dark Lord has always used bloody and intimidating means against our wizarding world, but many wizards have never compromised. Take today's commendation meeting for example, even children will not look back in the face of major issues. As adults, shouldn't we be so worried? Not to mention that the Dark Lord is just threatening, even if he really appears in the form of a soul, what do we have to be afraid of?" Chapter 228. Unlike the original novel, Minister Fudge, who had seen the real resurrection of the Dark Lord, was already feeling a little paranoid and he really didn't dare to say anything too confident. With the publicity, Fudge has become the biggest winner of this event. Although Yang Tian's 9-member team has been awarded medals, it seems that they have won, but in fact they are just some empty names. Of course, it is not to say that these reputations are not important, but it also depends on the future development to see whether they can match the reputations as always. But Fudge was different. After this battle, his reputation could be immediately converted into political capital. He even dared to say that his position as Minister of Magic was now as secure as a rock. But everything has two sides. He gained prestige and his position was secure, but at the same time, risks also followed. If there was any reversal in the matter of arresting Voldemort's soul, his position would be in jeopardy. In other words, if Yang Tian was in a bad mood one day and really released Voldemort, the first one to suffer would be this minister. Inadvertently, Minister Fudge had been tied to Yang Tian's chariot, although he himself did not realize it. Seeing that everyone watching the ceremony stopped talking, Fudge finally breathed a sigh of relief. He gestured to Yang Tian with satisfaction, and Yang Tian immediately took Voldemort's soul back to the soul prison. "We have finished discussing the heavy topic. Now, I declare," Fudge said with a brilliant smile, "the dinner after the commendation meeting has officially begun. I hope you all will enjoy your meal and have fun." The short and powerful speech finally caused the crowd to burst into cheers again. Buffet parties are not for eating, but for socializing. The 9-member group naturally became the object of everyone's pursuit. After dealing with waves of people, the friends finally had some time to be alone with their family. Coincidentally, everyone in the study group brought their families into this small circle and got to know each other. "Hi, you must be Hermione Granger, right? And you, the Paddle sisters, you are the elder sister Parvati? Then you must be the younger sister Padma? And you, Zhongqiu, right? Chinese? My husband is also Chinese." Sophie Foley still maintained her outgoing and friendly demeanor, and almost instantly integrated into the children's table. "I often hear Yang Tian mention you little guys. Especially when he was injured and recuperating last time, he talked about it every day, saying that he was happiest when he was studying and researching magic with you all." The friends were all moved when they heard this. Penelope, who was also outgoing, asked directly, "Auntie, you called everyone but me. I'm so sad. How could that be? Penelope gave a wonderful speech as the acting prefect on the first day of school. My son remembered it for a long time. Sophie's devilish nature emerged and she fought back. Ah! Penelope was stunned. She looked at Yang Tian in confusion, her face flushed. Is this guy so close to his mother? Why does he tell her everything? The friends burst into laughter when they recalled the scene at that time. Yang Tian was also speechless. His mother was still like this, telling everything to others. He had just arrived at Hogwarts and was completely in the dark. As a result, Zhang Qiu and Penelope looked at him differently. Especially since he was born in a nightmare family and was sensitive, he naturally complained to his mother when writing a letter. Now, everything has been revealed. You must be Yang Tian, I am Penelope's father, Ken Clearwater. Penelope's father also greeted Yang Tian in a friendly manner. Penelope had told everyone that her father was a wizard and her mother was a muggle. Therefore, her mother was not present today. Just when everyone was talking excitedly, old Lady Longbottom, who had already comforted Neville, came over with a smile on her face. Hi, everyone is here. Neville can make today's progress. I really want to thank everyone, especially you, Yang Tian, you have helped him a lot. I often hear Neville mention it. Feeling the kindness of old Lady Longbottom for the first time, Yang Tian was very pleased and hurried to chat with the old lady. It seemed that the negative impact brought by the killing bead was completely eliminated. However, the two of them tacitly did not mention any topics related to the previous misunderstanding, and they could laugh it off and forget their grudges. Seeing this, Yang Tian's grandmother Rosalind finally smiled with relief. After all, one was her best friend, and the other was her good grandson. She would not be embarrassed about how to choose, but she really didn't want to lose either of them. Next, Astoria took her father and sister's hands and joined in happily. Although she was also very happy to meet so many new brothers and sisters, Astoria's favorite thing to do was still to stick to Yang Tian. After Yang Tian was seriously injured by a conspiracy, he was sent back to the Yang family in China to recuperate. The little girl also suffered for a while because no one treated her. Fortunately, Yang Tian recovered quickly after his injury and quickly resumed the treatment of Astoria, which saved the little girl from the sea of suffering. During this period, the weekly treatment in the principal's office was resumed. It would be strange if this little girl didn't stick to Yang Tian. Pansy and her father Hector Parkinson also came. Compared with before, the head of the Parkinson family was more amiable and less aggressive. Yang Tian was not a person who favored one over the other. The conversation went very happily, especially when Grandpa Barnett joined the chat. The atmosphere became more harmonious. The Weasley brothers also joined the chat with their parents, and Ron and Harry came with them. Faced with Arthur and Molly's usual enthusiasm, the friends were somewhat flattered, but they still had a good impression of the couple. What was particularly surprising was that Arthur seemed to get along well with Yang Tian's father Yang Wen, and they soon chatted together. Ron and Harry were still a little absent-minded, especially Harry, who was often silent, and no one knew what he was thinking. Seeing more and more people gathered around Yang Tian, Draco also joined in with his parents and little followers. Compared with the time when he first joined the study group, Draco was obviously much more natural now, less flattering, more sincere, but Lucius and Narcissa still maintained their aristocratic etiquette, chatting and laughing, seemingly polite, but in fact, keeping people at a distance. Perhaps the originally pure chat environment was suddenly mixed with too many inexplicable factors. I don't know whether it was intentional or unintentional, but before I knew it, the members of the Order of the Phoenix, led by Augusta Longbottom and the Weasleys, and the pure-blood conservatives, led by the Malfoys and Hector, began to be clearly divided again, and their respective topics gradually became more acute. It must be said that the old guys are still so sharp. Yang Tian frowned when he saw this. He walked in front of the group of friends with an expressionless face, and with a few random gestures, everyone gathered around. Yang Tian started new topics from time to time, and soon, the friends who had been led astray by their parents were immersed in them and gradually regained their joy. The people who were on the verge of a fight suddenly felt that the argument just now was a bit boring. Why did it feel like no one was going to inherit their original insistence? Until this moment, Cedric, Angelina and Elena also came over with their families. The war without gunpowder finally ended and the scene became lively. Chapter 229. Although this grand commendation ceremony was very successful, and although Yang Tian and his friends gained great fame through this ceremony, in Yang Tian's eyes, everything was not that important. Even on the day he returned to Hogwarts, Yang Tian once again plunged into his intense and fulfilling study life. For example, today, Yang Tian arrived at teacher Nicholas Flamel's laboratory on time and discussed his learning questions with him. "Teacher, why do I feel that there are some problems with the statement about obsidian refining in this book?" This was the first time that Yang Tian raised a question since Nicholas Flamel began teaching him. "Is there a problem?" Nicholas Flamel frowned. He had personally verified this book. Especially the obsidian, as a magical material often used in alchemy and one of the important raw materials for making the Philosopher's Stone, he had tested it repeatedly and he had absolute confidence in it. But today, his newly accepted student told him directly that there was a problem with this formula. How could he not be angry at such a frivolous attitude? But he did not directly discourage Yang Tian's enthusiasm. Instead, he asked seriously, "Tell me what you are confused about." According to the books, the source of obsidian is black lava. When refining, it needs to be heated to 2000 C at a high temperature, and then the liquid obsidian is cooled to obtain refined obsidian. It is a mineral with a very low refining cost. Yang Tian said seriously. "Yes, that's right. With such a clear and simple refining process, what else could go wrong?" Nicholas Flamel became more and more puzzled. Yang Tian carefully sorted out the results of the 2 days of intelligent brain deduction in his mind, and then said solemnly, "This is a big problem, teacher. In my opinion, after such refining, the internal structure of obsidian will change slightly. Strictly speaking, this is already a different substance from the real obsidian. How is it possible?" Nicholas Flamel couldn't believe it, and then he emphasized, "I have been immersed in this obsidian for many years, and I will not make such a low-level mistake. All the obsidian extracted will undergo a series of tests. What I want to say is that the obsidian extracted by this method fully meets the characteristics of obsidian." Yang Tian said seriously, "Teacher, you will question everything I say now. Why don't we speak with facts?" Hearing this, Nicholas Flamel showed an interested look and said, "Tell me about it." He also wanted to teach his disciples a lesson with facts. "We will refine the obsidian according to our own ideas, and the result will come out naturally." Yang Tian said. "It seems that you have already come up with a complete set of ideas for this problem." Nicholas Flamel's mood improved a lot. It seems that his disciple is not aimless. However, he is also confident in his alchemy. Maybe this is a common problem of geniuses? It is difficult to be easily convinced of something that has been determined. Thus, under the auspices of Perennial Flamel, the competition between the two officially began. In fact, the refining of obsidian is really a very simple thing. Raise the flame temperature to 2000 C, put the ore in it, wait for it to completely liquefy, cool down. Nicholas Flamel only took a few minutes to complete the whole process. After doing all this, he stared at his apprentice's operation without blinking. Yang Tian's previous operation was exactly the same as his, but when the ore was about to melt, he threw a section of tungsten wire into the flame. Seeing that the obsidian ore was already liquefying rapidly, the surface of the originally insignificant tungsten wire began to show white crystals. Such a change surprised Nicholas Flamel and his wife, but they did not disturb Yang Tian's operation, but chose to wait and see. Just before the obsidian ore completely liquefied, Yang Tian had taken out the tungsten wire, peeled off all the white crystals and crushed them into powder, but when the obsidian liquid gradually cooled down, he added the powder into it, stirred it thoroughly, and continued to cool it down completely. Both pieces of obsidian were refined. Nicholas Flamel said nothing, but began to test the data of the two pieces of obsidian one by one. He wanted to speak with facts. But the final result shocked and confused him. "There is no doubt that you have indeed refined a piece of genuine obsidian. Moreover, the obsidian you refined is undoubtedly better than mine. It has a faster magic speed and lower magic loss, which is indeed a significant improvement. But if you say that the structural characteristics of the obsidian I refined have changed, this..." "Teacher, after reading a lot of alchemy books recently, I have come to a conclusion. I think the main reason why obsidian has been used as a magic conduction material in alchemy is not because of its conduction speed and low energy consumption, or it is more than that. After all, there are many other alchemical materials that meet these 2 points. I think the biggest feature of obsidian is its immovability and purity when conducting magic. I agree with this, but the obsidian I refined also has the same characteristics." Nicholas Flamel said, while doubtfully releasing a fire spell on one side of the obsidian he refined. After just a moment of conduction, the fire spell shot out from the other side of the obsidian, and the volume and strength of the magic did not seem to change. "No, teacher. This is just an appearance," Yang Tian said seriously. "Your testing method does not meet the rigorous standards of alchemy." Nicholas Flamel blushed when he heard this, and he quickly explained, "I simply showed you that the fire curse is still the fire curse, and the transmission has not deviated at all." "What about purity?" Yang Tian asked with a half-smile, "Or to put it another way, isn't there any deviation in the time return voucher?" As soon as he finished speaking, Yang Tian took out a small piece of mithril from the experimental table and began to carve it. In just a moment, he used the fire element to carve a runic word fire on it. This is also the result of Yang Tian's recent efforts. Ancient runes are an important part of alchemy. Many alchemical props need runes to be engraved to achieve the best effect. As a master of alchemy, Nicholas Flamel naturally cannot ignore such an important lesson. In the alchemy book given to Yang Tian, there are a lot of ancient runes. The ancient runes are indeed complex. It is not as simple as memorizing the 24 letters. Each letter and each stroke may have thousands of variations, success or failure. It was with the help of the intelligent computer that Yang Tian barely figured out the relationship between them recently, and finally completed the depiction of the two forms of the two runes of water and fire. Chapter 230. It is also very interesting to say that the ancient runes and the depiction of talismans are similar in nature. Both use the energy trajectory of all things in the universe to outline lines that conform to the laws of nature and achieve the use of energy. But the difference is also huge. The carving of talismans is more about tolerance. For example, the fire element is actually composed of characteristics such as heat, fierceness, and explosion. When carving talismans, although more emphasis will be placed on one aspect, the role of other characteristics in the flame will never be ignored. But runes are completely different. They extract commonalities and express the most extreme individuality. For example, expressing scorching fire and expressing explosive fire, although both are fire elements, are almost two completely different ways of depicting them in runes. The magic spells derived from them, namely the fire spell and the explosion spell, although they also belong to the fire element, have formed two completely different magic spell systems. Extending to the level of Eastern and Western magic, although Eastern magic also has some similar practices, at least there are roots to follow, and no matter how it changes, it still remains the same, but Western magic has completely abandoned the roots and pursues perfection and purity. This also reminded Yang Tian of the Western pure blood theory. Isn't it the truest portrayal of purity? And the Eastern doctrine of the mean seems to be a powerful practice of tolerance. Although Yang Tian's thoughts were in a mess at this time, his hands did not slow down at all. He placed the mithril engraved with the rune of the word fire in the middle, connected the obsidian refined by himself and his teacher on both sides, and connected a test talisman on the other side of each obsidian. This test talisman is very famous in the Chinese cultivation families. Its function is to test the properties of magic and talismans. It is similar to the 5 colored beads used by Yang Tian in the ancestral recognition ceremony. However, this test appendix is only useful for magic and talismans, and it is a one-time consumable. Just this kind of talisman, when he left the Yang family last time, his second uncle Yang Zhou gave him a stack. If he doesn't use it now, when will he use it? After everything was connected, Yang Tian completely released the runes on the mithril. The next moment, the fire elements in the surrounding air rushed into the mithril frantically, and the mithril also emitted a hot red light. The red light became more and more dazzling, and finally after the energy was fully stored, it dissipated to the 2 obsidian stones. The obsidian, as a magical material, was just a channel. It was visible to the naked eye that the energy entered the talisman without any delay along the channel. A magical scene happened. This talisman did not spontaneously combust like other objects, but instead firmly absorbed the energy entering from the outside until Yang Tian completely cut off the input of mithril in the middle. At this time, the 2 talismans finally showed different results. The talisman next to the obsidian refined by Yang Tian turned almost entirely red, and although there were slightly mottled marks, it was a bright red, but next to the obsidian refined by teacher Nicholas Flamel, more than 2/3 of the talisman turned red, and the remaining nearly 1/3 turned brown. What does this color represent? Nicholas Flamel asked, somewhat puzzled. The red color represents the energy released by the rune for fire, and the brown color represents the energy released by the runes for the barrier spell. Yang Tian tried his best to explain in a way that the teacher could understand. Are you sure? Nicholas Flamel asked in shock. Of course, if you don't believe me you can try it yourself. Yang Tian took out another test talisman and handed it over. Nicholas Flamel did not hesitate any longer and directly carved the word earth, the runic word for solidity, on another small piece of mithril. Almost at the moment when the mithril came into contact with the talisman turned brown at a speed visible to the naked eye. Why is this happening? Nicholas Flamel was completely lost in thought. Seeing what was happening, Pernell was also shocked. This was completely different from the research they had done before. But when she saw her husband's distraught look, she felt even more distressed. She hit Yang Tian's shoulder in annoyance, as if to warn him, "Why don't you speak up?" Yang Tian naturally did not pretend to be profound when he saw this. He smiled brightly and said, "That's right, teacher. I found a small problem when I was summarizing the contents of books related to alchemy. There are many subtle differences in the descriptions of the magical material obsidian in various books. For example, the Complete Guide to Metal Nobleness clearly points out that the reason why obsidian is used as a magical material is because of its immovability and purity, but the description in Natural Magic has become." Yang Tian explained his point of view in detail. "And the most critical problem I found is that the ancient books prefer to use obsidian ore directly as the magic material, rather than refined obsidian. Could it be that in ancient times, due to the influence of technology, it was impossible to reach a sufficient flame temperature? With this question in mind, I conducted a detailed comparison experiment on obsidian ore and obsidian, and then I found the problem. These black lavas contain a special substance, but it is not an impurity, but an important structure that maintains purity and immutability. However, this structure has a fatal problem, that is, the boiling point jumps back and forth between about 2000 degrees and 2010 degrees. Wait. Nicholas Flamel finally grasped the key to the problem after being reminded. He was so excited that he spoke incoherently, "That's right, that's right. That's it, that's it." In the previous conduction experiment, it was not that the obsidian consumed too much conduction, but the conversion. The essence of a part of the energy changed after conduction. So it's no longer consumption, but impurities. No wonder some of the alchemical props failed to be made before, but the problem could not be found. It turned out that there was a problem with the transmission. So tungsten wire has the function of absorbing that special structure. Nicholas Flamel seemed to have opened a new door. He continued to mutter, "Yes, that's right. So after the powder is dissolved in the obsidian again, even after stirring, it still cannot be guaranteed to be uniform. But this is enough to retain the two important characteristics of purity and non-deviability. I have to say, it's really a rough method. But I want to say, what a genius." Nicholas Flamel cursed excitedly. This scene made his wife Pernell, who had been standing quietly beside him, stunned. How long had it been since her husband was so excited? But she did not blame him at all. Instead, she looked at him with pity. Maybe he really wanted to continue studying his beloved alchemy? This has always been their common dream, right? In fact, it was not until 10 years ago that they had to stop and enjoy the so-called retirement life because their energy was getting weaker and weaker and their bodies could no longer keep up. Wasn't he heartbroken to leave his beloved alchemy? Maybe this was the reason why her husband chose to end his life? Thinking of this, Pernell couldn't help but look at Yang Tian with gratitude. If there really was a potion that could improve physical vitality, they might be able to study alchemy forever. Chapter 231. Time flies, and in the blink of an eye, it is already the end of April. Looking back on the past month, Yang Tian has mixed feelings. For wizards, there are not many entertainment options. Even the Quidditch competition that was highly sought after by the whole school ended last week. As expected, Ravenclaw won the championship with 3 wins under the leadership of Yang Tian, Slytherin was second, Gryffindor was third, and the rest seemed to be just studying, and studying again. Influenced by Yang Tian's study group, the learning atmosphere in Hogwarts is now extremely strong, and the young wizards of all grades are famous for their outstanding performance. Don't think that this is because they have seen other children's excellence and then reflected on themselves and made conscious efforts. They are still children, how could they be so playful? They really have no choice but to do this. Since the last commendation ceremony, the already famous Hogwarts has instantly become popular. Coupled with the great achievements in astronomy and transfiguration, as well as the existence of an expert research group, this old magic school has become the magic palace of dreams for many young European wizards. Hogwarts is now a busy place. Countless owls fly in from all over the world every day. These are letters from parents of school-aged children from various countries, asking about the conditions for attending Hogwarts. Among them are many famous old families in Europe. What's more, many outstanding young wizards and their parents who are already attending other magic schools have also written to us one after another, asking about transfer matters. Is this a joke? Durmstrang Academy, Beauxbatons Academy of Magic, and even Ilvermorny School of Magic and Castello Bush in America all sent letters to inquire, why are they poaching their students and outstanding students? Why are they engaging in such unfair competition? The school and the board of directors have held several meetings in a row, but since Dumbledore is not at school, it is difficult to come to a conclusion. However, rumors are already flying all over the Hogwarts campus. Rumor has it that since the teaching staff is insufficient to support the current number of applicants, new students will likely have to take a round of entrance exams before they are eligible to study at Hogwarts. Another rumor stated, in order to accept transfer applications from students of other magic schools, each grade within Hogwarts will list the results of the final exam as a key assessment condition. If the scores are not enough to support the learning requirements, the school is likely to adopt the means of survival of the fittest, eliminate some students, and leave the positions for those who want to study magic with all their heart. There are many similar rumors. At first, the young wizards didn't take these rumors seriously, but when Draco said with a heavy face that these rumors were not groundless, but were the topic of discussion of the school and the board of directors, when some parents sent 3 shouting letters a day, full of anger, saying that if they dared to let such a thing as being eliminated happen to them, and bring shame to their parents and the family, they would give them the most severe and cruel punishment in their lives. Everything became different. All the young wizards in Hogwarts were completely upset. Involution happened again and again, and it was unstoppable. How involved are these ordinary little wizards? Let's put it this way, wizard chess? Pranks? Night walks? Sorry, there's really no time. Even Filch was surprised to find that there's no need to patrol at night recently, because there really is no one out, okay? The internal competition of ordinary little wizards has put a lot of pressure on many friends in the study group. So, the study group also became competitive. Even Yang Tian's plan to hold a dinner party this month was jointly rejected by his friends. Don't ask why, the answer is that he is afraid of being overtaken by his classmates who are not as good as him, and he can't afford to lose face. Therefore, Yang Tian once again entered the stage of self-cultivation. Whether it was talismanology, alchemy, astronomy, alchemy, potions, herbal medicine, spells, or transfiguration, as long as he was interested, he would study it for a while. The feeling of wandering carefree in the ocean of knowledge was really pleasant. This situation continued until the beginning of May, when Dumbledore returned safely to Hogwarts. Principal Dumbledore, you are finally back. What do you want to talk to me about this time? Yang Tian asked as he pushed open the door of the principal's office with a little confusion. Of course, it's the latest situation in Albania. Dumbledore looked exhausted and went straight to the point. Ah! Yang Tian was slightly stunned, then he said with a hint of sarcasm, after you came back, you were the first one to talk to me about this? Is this reasonable? Don't talk nonsense. Dumbledore was in no mood to joke with this kid. He said unhappily, didn't I go to Albania this time at your request? This is a clear answer for you. Besides, didn't your prophecy have any result before? Yang Tian did notice the old principal's abnormality, and immediately sat down obediently, and asked seriously, is it serious? Alas, yes. The situation seems very bad. All sectors of Albanian society, including Muggles and wizards, seem to have been infiltrated. Dumbledore said with a heavy heart. What is the specific situation? Yang Tian's heart sank. How should I put it? This organization is indeed a bit weird. They started from remote mountain villages and forced the villagers to join an organization called the Empathy Society. They even threatened these villagers, if they do not join the organization, they will be haunted by bad luck and will die with regrets. Yang Tian seemed to have guessed something and asked, what happened next? Dumbledore replied, sure enough, some hardline villagers or believers of certain sects strongly opposed the matter, so the matter was left unresolved. But a few days later, these opponents died tragically in a tide of zombies. The villagers who survived the disaster were terrified and joined the sect one after another. Zombie tide? Yang Tian asked in confusion. In his understanding, the original book was a wizard novel, and there was no such thing as a necromancer. But Dumbledore's next words made him completely confused. I suspect it was done by the necromancer. Looking at the shocked Yang Tian, Dumbledore continued to explain, the necromancer is actually an important school of wizards. This school can be traced back to ancient Persia, Greece, and Rome in the Middle Ages. Unlike ordinary wizards, the necromancer knows how to summon and enslave the souls and bodies of the dead to make them undead creatures. Some of those with profound undead abilities can even become liches at the cost of their bodies to gain eternal life. Dumbledore seemed to be lost in some memories, that is a group of unique and crazy magic. Back then, how many talented young men devoted themselves to the school of necromancers in order to resurrect their loved ones or for the supreme power to control life and death. Some even completely sank in the process of soaring in the realm of death. Yang Tian thought of Dumbledore's experience, and his heart was inexplicably moved. It seems that Dumbledore must have studied the necromancer school in detail, right? Is this what he said about the efforts he made for his sister? But he did not interrupt, but listened quietly to the old principal's explanation. Chapter 232. You should also know about the witch-hunting movement in the 16th and 17th centuries, right? Dumbledore adjusted his mood and continued, it was a purge of all wizards. But only the necromancers were forced to the point of near extinction. There are two reasons for this. First, the Church, which was the main target at the time, produced a large amount of evidence of the evil deeds of the necromancers. It must be said that controlling people's life and death is such a terrifying thing. Especially among the necromancers, there are really bad apples. Second, wizards who practice necromancy are very easy to identify. They are weak, pale, mentally twisted, and unfriendly and suspicious of others. After centuries of persecution, the necromancers were almost wiped out, and a large amount of necromancy was also wiped out. Only a very small number of people who lost their inheritance took the fragments of necromancy and evolved into so-called psychics. Of course, some modern black magic, such as some curses, can still be found in the shadow of the dead. But what about now? There are necromancers in this mysterious organization. I really find it hard to understand. Yang Tian was really shocked this time. In other words, this organization is likely to have the books of the necromancer. This is the most reasonable explanation, but why didn't the necromancer appear before? Dumbledore nodded helplessly, but he immediately added, maybe the necromancer didn't need to take action before. The question that I am more concerned about is, what is the purpose of them collecting ordinary muggles to join the so-called Truth Society? Yang Tian was still puzzled. According to the conversation I overheard, they should be trying to control the votes. In 2 or 3 months, it will be the day of the Albanian general election. Dumbledore said seriously. What? Yang was stunned. But thinking about it carefully, he found it even harder to understand. Wouldn't it be simpler and more convenient to use magic to directly control the Muggle leaders? I guess that we should vote for important figures in the organization and let them step directly to the front. Dumbledore guessed. Full control. Yang Tian frowned even more deeply. But the next moment, he suddenly said in shock, Principal, you said that this so-called alien that can change the situation will not require a long time and a large number of people to dig it out, or a large number of lives to fill it. What? Dumbledore was also moved when he heard this. He thought carefully for a long time before he had to admit secretly that what Yang Tian said was very likely the truth. However, he did not continue to dwell on this issue. Instead, he said with a more solemn expression, compared with the Muggle world, the Albanian magic world is even worse off. Some of their magic families have been temporarily incorporated under strong means, and the remaining families are relying on the Ministry of Magic to resist. But even so, the Ministry of Magic can only barely gather manpower and is in a passive defense stage. Yang Tian was incredulous and said, they are just resisting foolishly like this, without any intention of asking for help. Albania is a special place. They don't have good relations with other countries. I feel this is also one of the reasons why Voldemort is hiding here. Dumbledore said uncertainly. Have you found any traces of Voldemort living in Albania? Yang Tian's heart moved, and he asked immediately. Yes, I never thought that Tom could live in a forest for so long. Dumbledore said with emotion. Has that forest been unsealed? Yang Tian asked. No, but the Red Robe has been away for a few days. The possibility of anyone else discovering me is very low, except the Red Robe. Dumbledore said confidently. Okay, Principal. Yang Tian was a little disappointed, but he still asked solemnly, what should we do now? I think I have to talk to Fudge. No matter what, we can't let them get something that can turn the situation around so easily, no matter what it is. Dumbledore also looked serious. Besides, we still have time, don't we? Will Minister Fudge agree? Thinking of Fudge's hypocritical attitude, Yang Tian questioned. It is indeed difficult, but we must strive for it. Moreover, I will mobilize old friends to think of other ways. Fortunately, considering the time, the holidays are coming soon. I can concentrate on dealing with this matter then. Dumbledore was calm. Yang Tian didn't say anything more, but he knew in his heart that he should prepare for the battle with all his strength, as there was really not much time left. The next evening, in the new residence of the Yang family in Hogsmeade Village, the living room was crowded. There was nothing that could be done about it. Apart from the friends from Hogwarts, almost everyone on Yang Tian's ship had come. Elder Xia, Elder Li, Mad Dog, 5 Idiots, Cai Yulianjiu and many of the Yang family's generals were all present. Mrs. Zabanai, Sally, Kira and the newly subjugated Fiammetta were all sitting upright. The old Freely couple, Heyman Greengrass, Yang Wen, Sophie and Yang Tian himself were also there. Seeing Wu Qi and Mad Dog return, Yang Tian was overjoyed. It seemed that they had fully recovered. The family's treatment methods were really amazing. Yang Tian quickly stepped forward and gave them a big hug. He also asked about their injuries and recent conditions, and then returned to his seat with peace of mind. Seeing everyone gathered, Yang Tian said in a loud voice, I have called everyone here today. I believe everyone understands the purpose. We really don't have much time left. After that, Yang Tian repeated to everyone in detail the latest information he had obtained from Dumbledore. Necromancer? I've heard the older generation mention it. Old man Barnett frowned. The stronger the necromancer, the more terrifying he is. Moreover, they are war-oriented wizards. The bonus to necromancers on large battlefields is multiplied exponentially. Just imagine that your companion who just got to the bottom suddenly stands up and becomes one of the enemies, attacking you crazily. When the enemy's corpse is blown to pieces, but can be reorganized into skeletons and lose the ability to continue fighting you, how huge an impact will that have on morale? Everyone was shocked when they heard this. Yang Tian thought about the description of the necromancer in his previous life and felt nervous. But he still said firmly, I believe everyone knows how serious this crisis is. This time, we have no way to retreat. All we can do is to be as well prepared as possible. After that, Yang Tian looked at Madame Zabanai and asked, what is the attitude of the Ministry of Magic? Madame Zabanai quickly replied, the Ministry of Magic is extremely indifferent to this matter. Minister Fudge's original words were, Albania is too far away, and we can't reach it. Old Master Barnett said sternly, it seems that this commendation meeting has given him a lot of confidence. Chapter 233. The old man was old, had a bad temper, and had no good feelings towards the Ministry of Magic. Now looking at what Fudge had done, how could he bear it? Even if that place is at the end of the world, we have to tie them to the chariot this time. Yang Tian said firmly, not allowing any argument, Sallies, let the pure blood families help to put pressure on them. The Fry family and the Greengrass family should also express their stance. By the way, don't just use coercion, but also give him a proper outlook on the huge benefits of the success of this operation. I still understand Minister Fudge's character. As long as the benefits are big enough, he is still very capable of taking action. How can it be just threats? Madame Zabanai said with a wry smile, I know this matter is of great importance, but I have made sufficient preparations. However, this time the minister's attitude was very firm. Afterwards, I investigated the reason, and heard that it was related to the agreement he reached with the Muggle Prime Minister before. Is it to restrict the Ministry of Magic's overseas operations? Or is it just referring to Albania this time? Yang Tian muttered in confusion, if that's the case, then let's bypass Fudge for now and directly contact the person who is actually carrying out the execution. We have been doing this since Fudge firmly refused, and the results are pretty good so far. Zabanai said seriously, we can have at least 2 teams of Aurors, and the Dementors have also agreed to send support personnel. Sally immediately responded, communication in the pure blood community is going relatively smoothly. Everyone is optimistic about the huge benefits that will be gained after this war, so everyone is eager to get started. And after several major wars, these pure bloods have gradually realized their own shortcomings, and have been stepping up their training recently. After all, the battlefield is no joke. Then, Kira also said solemnly, the alliance has been completely integrated, and the newly selected wizard team is also training step by step. I believe that they can give the other side a surprise in the war. In addition, there are some scattered dark wizards who have cooperated with us before and are willing to help. Although the price is high, they are also a good help. After a pause, she continued, by the way, Fenrir Greyback contacted me. He is the werewolf leader who participated in the battle between the purebloods and the black robes. He also hopes to join this operation, and the price he offered is also not low. Sophie rarely interrupted and said, I won't say much about others, but this werewolf leader is very dangerous, even notorious. He wants to create enough werewolves to conquer wizards, and the method he chooses is to bite children. Kira quickly replied, please rest assured, we have this information, and we have made corresponding arrangements. Yang Tian was very pleased to hear this. The abilities and initiative of Zabanai and the other two were truly extraordinary. It seemed that as long as any matter was handed over to them, they would implement and execute it without any compromise. Upon hearing this, Elder Li's eyes lit up. But soon, his expression became serious again. From Dumbledore's latest intelligence, the enemy is still sending more people. But the number of people that can be mobilized by the British wizarding world has decreased. And our Yang family currently has limited manpower in Hogsmeade Village, and is only slightly stronger than when we broke through that year. If we rush forward without caring about anything, the consequences will be unpredictable. Seeing that Elder Li was not blinded by hatred, Elder Xia couldn't help but sigh and said, do you want to ask the Patriarch for help? Yang Tian only thought for a moment, then said earnestly, this is Europe, not our home turf. We covered our faces and made minor moves before. Do you believe it? If the Yang family mobilizes a large force and joins forces with certain forces in the UK to resist the enemy, even if we are open-minded, many people will jump out to question us. At that time, our every move will be monitored, every action of ours will be criticized with a magnifying glass. This is not what we want. Therefore, it is good to act secretly like before. Heyman nodded in agreement and said, that's right. Although the Yang family's previous public appearances were grand, they were all in the capacity of parents of students, which is understandable. But this action is completely different. It is equivalent to openly interfering in other people's affairs. This is a taboo. We should be cautious indeed. After the others thought about it carefully, they nodded in agreement. Mr. Li frowned even more tightly. That's true, but you have to be strong enough. Judging from the current strength comparison, the final outcome is likely to be a lose-lose situation for both sides. Mr. Barnett thought for a moment and said, there's no need to be so pessimistic. I'll contact Mr. Borgin of Borgin and Burks. He is the black glove of all pure blood families and has a huge force under his command. If their people join us, our chances of winning will increase a lot. And the old man seemed to want to say something, but in the end he didn't say it. We can also list a series of incentive measures within the alliance. I believe more people will be willing to participate in this battle. Kyla said. No, the reward measures should be made known to everyone. It would be better to announce to the public, after this war, opportunities to join the alliance will be given again based on the size of contributions. Yang Tian said casually. This will make other alliances or families uneasy. Zabanai hesitated. If they feel uneasy, let them catch up. We are not stopping them, and they can also use this war as an excuse to offer more favorable conditions. Yang Tian said with a smile. I understand. Mrs. Zabanai nodded deeply and said, leave this matter to me. I will increase publicity and package this battle into a stage for various alliances and families to compete in strength and win people's hearts. Everyone nodded in agreement after hearing this. Young master, there is another crucial issue. We lack high-end combat power. It was still Elder Li who spoke, and he seemed to be acting as a brake pad. In that battle, it was actually the three red-robed men who brought devastating blows to us. In a one-on-one situation, their attack capabilities are stronger than mine. And this time, the intelligence shows that the other side will have at least 2 red-robed men in charge. If we count the necromancer mentioned earlier, the other side's high-end combat power will reach 3-4 people. High-end combat power? Yang Tian's heart tightened. Perhaps this was the real weakness of his group. After thinking for a while, he continued, Dumbledore should be involved. High-end combat power? I can think of a way. It was old Barnett who spoke. Everyone was stunned, and cast shocked glances. High-end combat power. Where can you find someone with the same strength as Dumbledore? This seems like a big joke. Chapter 234. Seeing the questioning looks from everyone, old Barnett was not at all flustered. He laughed and explained, "Didn't I mention this to you just now? Borgin and Burks. If the price is right, the Burks in their store should be able to hold back a red robe, right? Is this box so strong?" Heyman exclaimed in disbelief. Barnett's expression became serious. Heyman, Borgin, and Burks has stood the test of time. During the Second Wizarding War, no matter how big the storm was, Borgin and Burks still provided stable services to pure-blood families. Even if the task was to seize certain benefits from the Dark Lord, or to protect the employer and family from the Death Eaters. So, have you ever thought about the reason? Old Fry's words not only surprised Heyman, but also everyone present, especially Yang Tian. This was not in the original story at all. He didn't know whether the original story omitted a lot of important content, or whether the world had changed because of his arrival. But he didn't have time to think about it, and said solemnly, "Well, Grandpa, you will be responsible for contacting the Borgin and Burke store for relevant matters. But even so, there are only Dumbledore and Borgin who have high-end combat power. We are still at a disadvantage." Old Lee frowned. Maybe we can find the one in Hungary," Kira said after thinking for a while, but her voice trembled a little. "Please explain yourself clearly. How would I know who you are talking about if you are being so irrelevant?" Sally looked at her sisters with dissatisfaction. "Arabella Bathory, the one in Sayat Castle," Kira said hesitantly. "What? Are you crazy?" Mrs. Zabanai's voice became sharp. "She is the descendant of that mad woman. She is as bloodthirsty as that mad woman. Who are you talking about?" The conversation between the three people aroused Yang Tian's interest, and he couldn't help but ask puzzledly. "Arabella Bathory is a vampire countess and a descendant of the famous Bloody Mary in history. She has been hiding in Hungary for many years, but no one dares to cause trouble for her. But the problem is that she herself is a big trouble. It is said that she inherited her mother's talent, as well as her mother's ferocity and tyranny. Her subordinates are all sinister and cruel vampire descendants." Mrs. Zabanai carefully explained the past and present life of this female vampire to everyone. It is said that the Dark Lord had sought cooperation with her. But for some reason, it did not come to fruition. But the Dark Lord did not cause trouble for her, and the two sides lived in peace. So there are rumors that this countess who has lived for hundreds of years is not less powerful than Voldemort. Vicious and tyrannical. Yang Tian fell into deep thought. After a long while, he said, "Let's send someone to contact them first, just to test the waters. We have to wait and see how they react before making any decisions, right? Besides, are vampires that have lived for hundreds of years really that powerful?" Everyone agreed when they heard this, and many people were skeptical about the claim that this 100-year-old vampire was as powerful as Voldemort. However, it would always be a good idea to have some contact with him. Heyman suddenly interrupted, "There is also the issue of transportation. If we really mobilize so many people to go to Albania, transportation will be a very tricky problem." Then, the participants had a long discussion on the details of the trip to Albania. It was not until late at night that everyone slowly dispersed. In the next few days, Yang Tian was really confused. He thought that after Dumbledore returned to Hogwarts, the school would immediately announce a series of decisions to appease the students' impetuous hearts. However, it did not happen. The old headmaster still lived in seclusion and did his own thing, he even let the rumors in the school go unchecked. This was too inconsistent with Dumbledore's character in the original book, right? He didn't care about Hogwarts? What was the old headmaster up to? But all this has nothing to do with Yang Tian. He still lives a fulfilling and busy study life according to his own plan. On this day, Yang Tian was in the alchemy laboratory as usual, being tested and taught on alchemy knowledge by his teacher Nicholas Flamel. It must be said that the knowledge involved in alchemy is too complicated, and Nicholas Flamel's collection of books seems endless. Since becoming his apprentice, the amount of books Yang Tian has borrowed from Nicholas Flamel has reached 1/3 of the Hogwarts library. But even so, the teacher can still take out new books, just ask you if it's annoying. For Yang Tian, the benefit of reading so many alchemy books is that he is no longer a novice in alchemy. With the powerful function of the intelligent brain, he can now debate with his teacher. However, compared with other subjects, alchemy is different after all, and Yang Tian finds this course the most difficult to learn. Alchemy is a very mysterious and complex subject, and it is difficult to give it a real definition. This is not an exaggeration. Some people regard alchemy as an early form of chemical technology to explore the form of matter, Some people think it is the cosmology of early human civilization. There are also ancient runes, ancient Greek philosophical thoughts, and so on. It can be imagined that for such a complex subject, the various books are naturally varied, and the errors and omissions in them are too numerous to mention. Even Nicholas Flamel himself cannot be omniscient and omnipotent. In addition, Yang Tian has not completed the entry of all alchemy books. He himself is extremely lacking in alchemy-related experiments. So even if the answer given by the intelligent computer was compared with the teacher's result, the winning rate could only reach 1:9, but this mere one had already driven Nicholas Flamel crazy. This 11-year-old child had just learned alchemy from him for a short time. Moreover, even if Yang Tian failed %, it would still bring him a lot of inspiration and correction. Therefore, what Nicholas Flamel and his wife are most willing to do now is to discuss alchemy with Yang Tian. For example, now, the three of them are arguing over the improvement ideas of a magic source. But at this moment, there was a knock on the door of the laboratory. Several people who were discussing excitedly frowned, especially Nicholas Flamel, who was furious and looked very dissatisfied. Who is this person? Is the huge sign at the door saying experiment in progress, do not disturb? Just for a show? Anyone who knew Nicholas Flamel knew that what he hated most was undoubtedly being interrupted when he was studying or discussing a problem. Yang Tian was actually very depressed. The feeling of being suddenly interrupted was really annoying. Perennial Flamel patted the two men's shoulders helplessly to comfort them, and then hurriedly opened the door. Chapter 235. The moment the door to the laboratory was opened, a particularly large female figure appeared. However, despite her tall and burly figure, this lady had a very pretty olive face and a pair of large, dark, watery eyes. Yang Tian's heart moved. Isn't this Madame Maxime, the principal of Beauxbatons Academy of Magic in the original book? The next scene was even more magical. The head of a school should have her own pride and reserve. However, she did not. As soon as Madame Maxime entered the room, she bent her huge body and respectfully called to Perennial Flamel, "Hello, teacher. I'm dizzy." Yang Tian was stunned. Oh my god, this famous principal is actually the disciple of the master's wife? But at this time he couldn't ask directly, so he could only watch the situation from the side. Seeing that it was her favorite student, Pernelle seemed very happy. She patted Madame Maxime's shoulder as she bowed and said, "Hey, it's you, Olim. Why did you suddenly remember to come and see me? I remember that we haven't seen each other for nearly 5 years, right?" Madame Maxime felt a little aggrieved when she heard this. Tears as big as corn kernels instantly flowed down her cheeks. "Teacher, since you retired, you have been particularly annoyed by visits from students like us. If it wasn't for the Beauxbatons Academy of Magic's anniversary celebration last time, I think the interval between our meetings would definitely be more than 5 years. Pernelle blushed slightly at this soft rejection. My health was so bad before, how could I have the mood to deal with others? Fortunately, there was the elixir sent by Yang Tian, otherwise, maybe the last meeting would have been a farewell forever? Pernelle couldn't help but sigh. Seeing that the teacher had no intention of blaming her, Madame Maxime hurried to Nicholas Flamel and said respectfully, "Hello, Nicholas Flamel. I am really sorry for today. I know your rules and I hate being disturbed. But I also know that once you start your experiment, you have no concept of time at all. And I have come from a long way this time, and my schedule is very tight. I am really afraid of not being able to see you and the teacher, so I have to do this." Seeing that it was a student that his wife had not seen for many years, Nicholas Flamel's anger at being interrupted in the discussion had mostly subsided, and seeing that Madame Maxime was as polite as ever and the reason she gave was indeed reasonable, it was even harder to get angry. So, he also exchanged a few polite words. At this time, Pernelle introduced, "Come, Olim, let me introduce you. This is my husband's student, Yang Tian. I believe you must have heard of his name." Then he said to Yang Tian, "This is Madame Maxime, the principal of Beauxbatons Academy of Magic, and also my student." The other party was the head of a school, so Yang Tian naturally could not be impolite, and he hurried forward to greet him. Madame Maxime naturally knew Yang Tian's situation, so she also responded enthusiastically. For a moment, the laboratory was filled with joy. After chatting for a while, Madame Maxime finally said solemnly, "Teacher Nicholas Flamel, I came here this time mainly because of the entrustment of the French Ministry of Magic and all the teachers and students of Beauxbatons Academy of Magic. I hope that you and my teacher can return to Beauxbatons to take charge. You two are too important to the Academy. If you and your teacher had not insisted on retiring and enjoying life, Beauxbatons would never let you leave. Even if you retire, you two are still honorary professors of Beauxbatons now. Little Olym, I'm not as easy to talk to as your teacher. Nicholas Flamel said with a half-smile. Pernell and I have indeed retired. We are now in Hogwarts to enjoy life and teach my student. I am not really interested in other things. So, forget about things like coming back or taking charge. If we have that time, your teacher and I might as well go on vacation together. Hearing this, Pernell couldn't help but have a look of longing in her eyes. It must be said that she had a very happy time during this period, spending the whole day with her husband immersed in alchemical experiments and teaching talented students. If she could really take her favorite trip in her spare time, it would be perfect. Seeing the reactions of the two, Madame Maxime knew that her goal today might be difficult to achieve. But she rolled her eyes and asked quickly, "Since you said so, how dare I force you? But since the teacher and you are here to teach students, I wonder if Beauxbatons can also send a few students to audit? If there are really good seedlings, wouldn't you have another proud disciple? Come on! Haven't you sent enough students for the test every year? They don't meet the standards at all." Nicholas Flamel was already a little impatient, but after a pause, he sighed and explained, "It's not that I don't want to accept them. You have to understand, Olym, alchemy is the subject that requires the most talent. If they can't meet the requirements but force themselves to learn, they will be trapped in the vast alchemy and eventually lose themselves, becoming mediocre and accomplishing nothing. Those are geniuses in your eyes, and they have fallen like this. Don't you feel sad? What about this child?" Madame Maxime was a little unconvinced. As the headmaster of Beauxbatons, she knew about Yang Tian's miraculous past in detail. But even so, she still found it hard to believe that there was really someone who could meet Nicholas Flamel's standards for taking in an apprentice. "Olym, this child is more outstanding than you can imagine. Let me put it this way, he has an extremely high talent in alchemy, and his achievements in the future will definitely far exceed mine." Nicholas Flamel did not hesitate to praise him. How could this be possible? Madame Maxime was even more unconvinced, but she did not dare to say it out loud. But Maxime's reaction was finally seen by Pernell, and she said solemnly, "Olympe, don't doubt what my husband said. As my former student, and especially as the principal of Beauxbatons Academy of Magic, you should have a sharper eye. I can only say that Nico's words are not exaggerated at all. You can never imagine how outstanding this child is." She deliberately emphasized her tone, and blinked from time to time while speaking, as if hinting at something. The teacher's abnormality immediately caught Madame Maxime's attention. After a little thought, she figured out the key points. Could it be that the teacher wanted me to bring Yang Tian back to Beauxbatons? At this thought, her heart couldn't help but become active. Where did all the changes in Hogwarts come from in such a short period of time? Wasn't it caused by Yang Tian? If Yang Tian could really be brought back, wouldn't everything be solved? Of course, now is not a suitable time. After all, this is Hogwarts. If she poaches someone else's people on their territory, if the Hogwarts school knew about it, it would not only damage the reputation of Beauxbatons, but she herself would also most likely be blacklisted. Fortunately, the semester will be over soon, and I know the address of the Fry family. When the time comes, I will pay them a visit and no one will be able to say anything. The biggest problem now is what reasons and conditions to use to convince them." After understanding everything, Madame Maxime behaved more gently. After everyone had a pleasant chat for an afternoon, she reluctantly left Hogwarts. Chapter 236. To be honest, Madame Maxime's arrival did not cause any waves at Hogwarts, and many young wizards didn't even know about it. The reason is simple. As the final exams are approaching, all students have started preparing for the exams. The final exams in previous years would have been more than this, but this year is completely different. Apart from other things, the rumors flying around are enough to make the young wizards feel suffocated. Therefore, the atmosphere in Hogwarts is very tense, like a battlefield without gunpowder. However, Yang Tian and the other 9 people, as well as many young wizards who were top students, became popular at this time. When after-school time came, everyone would consciously gather around them and ask them for advice on various problems they encountered in their studies. Especially Yang Tian, he was a little afraid to show up. Can you imagine? During breakfast time, there would be a long line around him. Even during the few minutes when he was on the somersault cloud, there would be little wizards, known or unknown, coming up to ask for advice. But there was really nothing he could do about it, because this little wizard could always give the most pertinent and detailed solution in the shortest time, and without any mistakes or omissions. Faced with such a scene, Yang Tian was so depressed. But at this moment defined as a matter of life and death for all the students at Hogwarts, he really didn't want to leave an impression of being unreasonable and superior. Therefore, he could only take into account all parties and try his best to help these anxious little wizards answer their questions. Time goes by day. Finally, under this extreme depression and torment, the final exam finally arrived as scheduled. The first exam was in Professor Flitwick's Charms class, and the task was to cast a levitation spell on a pineapple and control it to tap dance across a desk. It has to be said that this test question made many first-year wizards feel uneasy, because it required precise control over spells. Although everyone had worked hard to cram for a long time, when the exam actually began, most of the little wizards' so-called pineapple tap dance was no more than a long jump competition with the wrong drum beat. Of course, the little wizards in the study group were an exception, especially the members of the group of 9. After daily training by nightmare, their precise control over the spell played a huge role, and each of them completed the exam perfectly. Yang Tian's test was even more exaggerated. He used transfiguration to create 2 new pineapples, forming a pineapple group. Under the guidance of his ancient magic wand, the 3 pineapples sometimes changed their formations and sometimes changed their dance steps, causing Professor Flitwick to exclaim repeatedly and draw a big O, outstanding, on the score sheet. The content of the transfiguration exam was, turn a mouse into a snuff box. The moment Yang Tian heard the question, he thought of the inner painted snuff bottles in his previous life that were infinite and immaterial. Although the styles of snuff boxes and snuff bottles are very different, this does not affect Yang Tian's bold innovation. Thus, a small and exquisite, crystal clear and lifelike snuff box with landscapes and figures was born, which made Professor McGonagall love it. Without a doubt, he got another big O. Although the misunderstanding about the killing bead had been resolved, Professor Snape's attitude towards Yang Tian did not seem to have changed much. Therefore, when Yang Tian was preparing the forgetfulness potion in the potion class exam, he was still very focused. He even used the deduction function of his brain to replace the expensive main material, the water of the Forgotten River, with 2 cheap common Chinese herbs. The direct consequence of doing this was that Professor Snape's defenses were somewhat broken. After discovering that the ingredients Yang Tian chose were different from what he had described in class, Snape stared at the boy with his sharp eyes, trying to find faults in his every move and then ridicule him. Unfortunately, until the potion was finally completed, Snape couldn't even say a word of doubt. Looking at the finished product of the amnesia potion, whose cost had been greatly reduced but whose medicinal properties had been greatly increased, Snape was almost hurt from holding back his anger. He said bitterly, although your change in the prescription has achieved a good effect, it will bring shame to the noble and mysterious science of potions. Yang Tian did not say anything to refute, but looked at the old bat with a half-smile, and drew a big O on the test score. As for the exams in other subjects, such as history of magic, astronomy, and defense against the dark arts, to be honest, it was even more difficult for them to pose even the slightest threat to Yang Tian. Finally, with the end of the last exam, the young wizards who had been suppressed for a long time finally couldn't hold back any longer. At that moment, they gathered outside the examination room, cheering, hugging, and crying. Yang Tian and his study group friends smiled at each other, breathed a long sigh of relief, and felt relieved. Next, these little guys can have fun for a whole week until the test results are announced. Yang Tian, who finally made time, found Dumbledore again, and it was time to enter the restricted area. Fortunately, Dumbledore did not continue to shirk responsibility this time, but started their journey to the restricted area that night. The forbidden section of the library was quiet at night. This was the 3rd night that Yang Tian and Dumbledore had been here. It was completely different from the last time when the library was in danger. With Dumbledore's protection, the books in the forbidden section finally shed their mysterious veil. The covers of these books may be tattered, with mysterious symbols and spells engraved on them. Their pages may be yellowed with age, and have a faint musty smell. The contents of the books are full of dangers and challenges, and may involve the secrets of black magic, unknown magical fields, or forbidden knowledge. Each page of them may hide deadly spells or incomprehensible magic theories, requiring readers to have extremely high wisdom and caution to interpret. Some books may tell about ancient magical rituals, whose steps are complicated and easy to go wrong. A mistake may lead to unpredictable consequences. Other books may record the existence of evil creatures or dark forces, which is chilling. Of course, some books are extremely dangerous and evil. They are locked in sealed bookshelves and can only be read by specific people or under specific circumstances. Dumbledore was a man of his word. He did not use any excuse to stop Yang Tian from reading these evil books. Instead, he explained to the little guy the correct way to open the books one by one, as well as his understanding and cognition of the book. This surprised Yang Tian and at the same time made him admire him. Yang Tian just listened, watched, and immersed himself in it. Chapter 237. Yang Tian enjoyed the pleasure of reading books while listening to Dumbledore's careful guidance. But at this moment, a locked book with the word Star Classic written in ancient Chinese characters on the cover attracted his attention. Yang Tian quickly took it in his hand and read it carefully. Dumbledore was stunned when he saw the book, then he said playfully, "This book was brought into Hogwarts by your astronomy teacher Sinistra." "Ah? But the teacher never told me that she had such a book." The old principal's words immediately attracted Yang Tian's attention. According to her, this book is a very important astronomical work in China. Back then, her teacher Stella Herschel spent a huge amount of money to buy this book and was overjoyed. She invited many Chinese people to translate the book, but the result of the translation surprised her. At first, she thought the translator was not careful and deceived her, but the translation results of Chinese people from different places were surprisingly consistent, and Stella couldn't help but believe it. Dumbledore patiently explained everything that happened that year. Stella felt cheated, and in the belief of out of sight, out of mind, she gave the book to her beloved student Professor Sinistra. But Sinistra did the same thing as her teacher. The end result was that Professor Sinistra donated this important Chinese astronomy work to the Hogwarts library without hesitation. And for Professor Sinistra's sake, Hogwarts locked the book in a banned bookshelf. Puff! Such a bloody plot almost made Yang Tian spit out blood. He quickly lowered his head to read the book, wanting to see if the contents were really as outrageous as the old principal said. After taking a look at it, Yang Tian really found something wrong. He originally thought that there were two reasons why the content of this book was wrong. First, the translators Stella found were all ordinary muggles, and this book was a work of astronomy for cultivation. They knew nothing about the Chinese cultivation methods and naturally could not understand the true meaning of the book. Second, this ancient Chinese book was probably written in classical Chinese, and these translators could not understand the true meaning of the ancient text. But now that I have read it myself, it is not true. How should I put it? This book is simply like a patchwork, even a sentence in it, Yang Tian can't understand it. This is not an exaggeration. For example, there is a sentence in this book, "The moon in the north can reach the blue government, and the sky can stop," which can be used as a condensed horse. What is this? It is completely irrelevant. But he still did not give up and continued to collect the content of the book. Suddenly, Yang Tian felt his eyes blurred, and saw a small white insect between the pages of the book. He thought it was just an ordinary insect, but who would have thought that what this little insect did next would shock Yang Tian so much that his scalp went numb. However, the little bug lazily opened its mouth and nibbled at the word, "Earth," on the page. That's right, it was not eating the paper itself, but the words on it. The more outrageous thing is yet to come. When the word was completely eaten, the place where the word was originally located became blank, and the next moment, the little insect's mouth began to chew continuously, and after a moment, a brand new word appeared in the blank space. The whole process is both weird and fascinating. When Yang Tian saw this scene, two words quickly popped up in his mind. This is a well-known creature in China. Yang Tian knew about the insect called bookworm in his previous life. In fact, this insect is very common and is distributed all over China. It is afraid of sunlight and often eats books, clothes, glue, and glue. The reason why scholars like to call themselves bookworms is that bookworms, an ancient insect, love to chew books. Secondly, bookworms spend almost their entire life with books. When they are hungry, they eat books. When they are sleepy, they use books as their bed. They sleep and wake up with books every day. But Yang Tian saw the word woodfish in this life, and it was in the Yang family's library. You know, the woodfish recorded in the library is far from as simple as what he saw in his previous life. According to the records in the Yang family's collection of books, the so-called bookworm is a bookworm. When it is young, it eats ordinary books. But if the bookworm is lucky enough to eat the word immortal 3 times, it will undergo a change like a carp jumping over the dragon gate, which can even be said to be an evolution. The evolved silverfish have completely escaped the category of ordinary insects. They have independent thinking and endless lifespan. Although they have not become immortals, they live with the sun and the moon. They still like to read all kinds of books, but they only linger and play in the most profound books. They can turn profound books into nonsense dregs. They can also turn decay into magic, turning a useless book into an extremely profound and mysterious one. As a cultivator, everyone would be ecstatic to obtain an evolved bookworm. Because you have no idea how long this bookworm has lived, where it has been, and what earth-shattering books it has read. Bookworm will bring you a huge sense of surprise, like opening a blind box. There is another equally important reason. When you gain the loyalty of the evolved silverfish, you can take this little guy to new places and read new books. And you only need a thought to instantly recall it back to your mind from thousands of miles away. After recalling the method of subduing the evolved silverfish mentioned in the book, Yang Tian calmly held the book with one hand, but bit the fingertips of the other hand with his teeth. The moment the blood flowed out, he dripped it on the silverfish without hesitation. The moment the blood came into contact with the silverfish, it jumped far away as if frightened. In the next instant, it disappeared. But at this time, Yang Tian was not in a hurry. He continued to scan books as if he had completed his mission. The only difference was the smug smile on his face. Dumbledore was very curious about what was happening before his eyes, but he did not ask any more questions. Instead, he continued with his previous explanation. Time passed quickly, and in the unnoticed corner of the restricted books area, the blood of the frightened barracuda did not disappear, but seeped into its body along its surface. After all the blood had entered its body, a white light suddenly shone around the frightened silverfish, and its figure disappeared in the white light. The next moment, it appeared directly in Yang Tian's mind. Who's there? The sudden burst of white light illuminated the originally dim restricted book area, and Dumbledore, who had been waiting nearby, was startled. He hurried to the place where the white light appeared. But in just a moment, everything returned to normal. How could there be anything unusual? Dumbledore looked at Yang Tian in confusion, but the little guy didn't respond at all and continued to read the book with all his heart. Chapter 238. After completing today's quota of book scanning, Yang Tian took the unrecognizable star Bible that he had asked for from Dumbledore and hurried back to his dormitory. He really wanted to know what kind of surprise this silverfish could bring him. After jumping onto the bed, Yang Tian closed his eyes and communicated with the little guy in his mind. Although the book fish is intelligent, it has a simple mind and lives in different books all its life, so its memory is naturally empty except for books. After a series of warm offensives, the silverfish finally stopped panicking and had the desire to talk. Therefore, Yang Tian also completely understood the horror of this little guy. How to say it? 8 words are the most appropriate to describe it: well read in ancient and modern times, and well versed in both Chinese and Western learning. Yang Tian was really curious about what this little guy had experienced in his life. Poetry, songs, biography, history, geography, painting, etc. There are too many worldly books, covering everything. What makes Yang Tian laugh and cry is that he can even find the 8-part essays that have been praised and criticized in the history of his previous life from the memory of the bookworm. Of course, there are many books on cultivation, and what is even more strange is that the little guy actually has many core secrets of the family and sect in his memory, which makes Yang Tian sweat. For example, Shangqing Sex Yin Yang Eyes, 5 Ghosts Soul Exorcist Technique, Xiangzi's Corpse Driving Secret Technique, Tianqi Mansion's Golden Light Curse, and so on. Even the Yang family's detailed explanation of ice talismans is in this little guy's memory. That is one of the core talisman-making techniques of the Yang family. However, compared with these secret books about techniques, what really shocked Yang Tian were the books basically related to Tao. Star Classics is an ancient astronomy book that uses stars to enter the Tao. Although the book does not introduce the stars in the sky in detail, it contains a complete set of exercises to use the energy of stars to cultivate the body of stars and eventually enter the Tao. Yang Tian was both envious and unfamiliar with it. This is quite different from the astronomy he currently knows. Alchemy Classics is a method of refining all the elixirs in the world, using the strange energy emitted when the elixir is completed as a guide to temper oneself and eventually enter the Tao. However, not to mention that there are not many elixir recipes, there is also a condition that the more excellent the elixir recipe, the more abundant the divine energy. The improvement of ordinary elixir recipes is extremely limited. The 5 Elements Chaos Sutra uses the 5 elements as the basis to refine one's own danshan and form a 5-element chaos body. Once you enter the Dao with this, you can transform the 5 elements into chaos and quickly increase your strength. But I am 10 elements, not just 5 elements. The last one is the most mysterious. Because this book has only 28 characters, and Yang Tian doesn't recognize any of them. On that day, the reason why he said this book was amazing was not because he didn't recognize the characters, but when Yang Tian looked at these characters carefully, he inexplicably felt a mysterious feeling, as if it was there and not there. These books are of course profound, but the one that Yang Tian is most satisfied with and most in need of is a book called Star Picking Technique. The so-called star picking technique does not mean that one can really pick stars, rather, when a practitioner forms a bond with the stars, he can draw on the power of the stars in the night battle to double the damage of his spell attacks. As more and more books poured into Yang Tian's mind and merged with his original memories, Yang Tian soon felt dizzy. But he didn't care about these details. At this time, he was no longer a simple person, and he had sufficient confidence in the strength of his soul. What he didn't expect was that when the last bit of the fish's memory was shared with Yang Tian, the cold mechanical voice of the intelligent computer sounded again, "Ding, the data collection of Chinese studies has been completed, and the Chinese studies system has been modeled. In the next 3 days, the system will be upgraded as necessary, please be patient." "Yang Tian, can you still finish entering the books in the restricted section before leaving Hogwarts?" Alas, it's painful and joyful. Just when Yang Tian was still worrying about the problem of entering the forbidden book area, the year-end dinner arrived as scheduled, and many young wizards also rushed to the auditorium chatting and laughing. The hall had already changed its appearance. The blue and bronze background filled the whole hall, which was the color of Ravenclaw. Banners with eagles of wisdom were hung all over the walls of the hall. The young wizards from other colleges were not surprised by this change. According to the score hourglass, Ravenclaw was undoubtedly the college with the highest score, and it seemed that the college cup would definitely belong to them. This made the young eagles and Professor Flitwick very excited. They had not won this award for a long time. As the young eagles were excitedly greeting each other, the dinner quietly began. "Another year has passed," Dumbledore said happily. "Before you enjoy the delicious dishes, you must listen to an old man's clichés. Whether you are a freshman who has only studied for 1 school year or have lived in Hogwarts for many years, I believe that no one will deny that this is an extremely wonderful year. This year, you have witnessed the rapid development of transfiguration, the strong resurgence of astronomy, and the capture of the soul of the Dark Lord. Of course, you have also witnessed the rumors flying around and the fear of losing the opportunity to continue studying in Hogwarts." The old headmaster blinked mischievously before continuing, "So here, I must make it clear that Hogwarts will not give up any motivated little wizard. Maybe their qualifications are inferior, maybe they are a little naughty and playful, but these are not reasons for us to give up on them. As for why I have not clarified the rumors and have chosen to remain silent, it is because this is a test and spur for you." Dumbledore smiled and looked around. "In the face of difficulties and setbacks, can you maintain firm beliefs and courage? I am very happy to see that you have all passed this test." The applause rang out like thunder, and the faces of the little wizards were filled with smiles of excitement and relief. Dumbledore continued, "I think that, apart from the information related to this rumor, the most important thing that everyone is most concerned about is undoubtedly the winner of the House Cup. Everyone knows the specific scores of each house: Gryffindor, 258 points, Hufflepuff 355 points, Slytherin 460 points, Ravenclaw 477 points. The Ravenclaw table immediately erupted in thunderous cheers, and everyone clapped their hands in celebration. Even Professor Flitwick was shaking with excitement. But at this moment, "Yes, yes, very well done, Ravenclaw." Dumbledore continued, "However, several things that happened recently should actually be taken into account." The hall suddenly became very quiet, and the Ravenclaw smiles faded a little. "Well, here's the situation." Dumbledore continued to keep the suspense. "After my careful calculations, I found a problem. Even after adding the scores for these things, the rankings of each college will not change at all. So, forget it. Who cares?" After saying that, the old headmaster winked playfully. "Tisk! Haha!" The little wizards below were all laughing like crazy, and the little eagles breathed a sigh of relief. Dumbledore also waved his hand and said, "Now, let's enjoy this beautiful night. The banquet officially begins." The ribbons were flying, and the rich food appeared on the long table in an instant. The little wizards laughed and talked happily, sharing every bit of the school year. Yang Tian also joined in, sharing his interesting stories with his friends. Yang Tian certainly knew that the crisis was not far away and that heavy challenges lay ahead. But at this moment, at this year-end dinner full of magic and warmth, he was willing to enjoy this rare relaxing time. Chapter 239. Almost at the same time as the Hogwarts end-of-year dinner, in the study room of Foley Manor. Mr. Foley, it is an honor to receive your call again. Mr. Borgin bowed flatteringly, his voice as greasy as ever. Mr. Borgin, please take a seat. Old Foley stood up, which was rare for him, and gracefully returned the gesture and offered his seat. Mr. Borgin was not at all pleased when he saw this. Instead, he said bitterly, Mr. Foley, if you have anything to say, just tell me. There is no need to be so polite. Mr. Borgin, don't think too much. Just sit down and talk. Things are just a little complicated, but not to the point where Mr. Borgin should be frowning. Old Fry stubbornly made another gesture of invitation. Mr. Borgin had no choice but to do it carefully. Come, Mr. Borgin, this is the best Da Hong Pao in China, let's try it together. As he said that, he began to demonstrate the tea ceremony he had just learned from his son-in-law, warming the pot, cleaning the utensils, adding tea, waiting for the tea to boil. Although his movements were not so skillful, in front of Mr. Borgin, who knew nothing, he seemed inexplicably grand and elegant. Seeing such a diligent old Foley, Mr. Borgin felt even more embarrassed. Borgin and Burkes has always been committed to providing the best possible and thoughtful service to all families. If the Foley family has any problems that are difficult to solve, Borgin and Burkes will definitely fight to the last breath. Old Fry pushed the cup of tea in front of Mr. Borgin. After he carefully took a sip, he smiled and said, the long-standing reputation of Borgin and Burkes is recognized by everyone and is invaluable. Reputation is the foundation of life. After a pause, he continued, this is a big deal. If it succeeds, 15 bags of gold coins, plus a share of the potion business run by the Fry family. How about it? The moment he heard this, Mr. Borgin's eyes were filled with uncontrollable greed. But the next moment he felt as if he had fallen into an ice cave, and said awkwardly, such a generous reward, the money must be too hot to handle, right? Dear Mr. Foley, can you tell me about this mission? Seeing Mr. Borgin's reaction, Barnett couldn't help but feel regretful and stunned. Was this still the Mr. Borgin he knew? He didn't agree to such an amazing benefit. Was the offer too low? But Old Fry still stated his request, mobilize all your people to join the battle against Albania. As long as you win, all the benefits I just mentioned will be yours. Wow, what are you talking about, respected Mr. Foley? We at Borgin and Burkes will do our best to contribute to our magical world. Of course, your gift will make our employees work harder. Upon hearing this, Mr. Borgin's words became greasy and greedy again. As one of the owners of Borgin and Burkes, the black glove of many families, how could he not know about the frequent changes in the wizarding world recently? Thinking about the many forces that have been involved, Borgin's heart was hot. Mobilizing so many people to attack the evil organization that they once captured alive. What is there to worry about? Then let's make a deal. Old Fry stretched out his right hand tentatively. Of course, that's undecided, said Mr. Borgin firmly, and at the same time, he shook Old Foley's hand tightly with both of his. Oh, by the way, I have to remind you solemnly like last time. Old Foley seemed to suddenly remember something and said again, first, I need all the staff of Borgin and Burkes to go out. Remember, everyone. Second, there will be rewards only if you win. If you fail, you won't get a single copper nut. Third, you can't escape alone before our main force retreats. Fourth, if my grandson wants to go out to see the world during the holidays, prepare for the worst and make sure my grandson is safe no matter what. Mr. Borgin listened carefully to Old Foley's request. Every time he heard one, he patted his chest and tried to guarantee it. Although he was a little confused and uneasy in his heart, he had no choice. The other party gave too much. And he was also clear about the general situation. What could be wrong? What he said was right. The children didn't run away, but his own people ran away first. He couldn't afford to lose face. So, after a very harmonious conversation and repeated assurances, Mr. Borgin hurriedly left Foley Manor. Back to Hogwarts, happy times are always short-lived, and a week of revelry passed in the blink of an eye. And Yang Tian also completed the entry of all the books in the restricted area before returning home as he wished, and to his delight, there were no more accidents. During this period, the intelligent brain was upgraded, and Yang Tian got the fourth thread as he wished. According to the convention, Yang Tian used thread 4 as a standing thread and used thread 3 to analyze the recipe of Jianling Wudao pill. On the last day of the week, the exam results were finally announced. Yang Tian undoubtedly won first place in the grade with all O scores, but Hermione pouted helplessly when she saw her report card showing that she ranked second in the grade. From childhood to adulthood, this seems to be the first time that she didn't get first place in the exam. And judging from the situation, this situation will continue to happen in the next 6 years. What a nightmare! The other members of the study group didn't have so many complaints. Looking at their grades that they had never dared to imagine before the semester, they all laughed heartily. Of course, along with the transcript, there are also notification forms and letters of commitment, promising that they will abide by the law on reasonable restraint of underage wizards outside of school. Yang Tian frowned helplessly, but still signed his name. He knew about Trace's abnormal ability. Didn't Harry in the original book almost fall into its hands? But how could he not sign this letter of commitment? Thinking about the upcoming war, Yang Tian even wanted to go directly to Dumbledore for help. The 9 members of the group were all silent, and Penelope and Zhang Chu slapped their foreheads in annoyance. They had experienced this scene before, so how could they forget it? They were also desperately preparing for the upcoming battle, so were they going to give up halfway? In a dilemma, everyone looked at Yang Tian. But at this moment, Yang Tian's heart was shocked, because from the moment he signed the contract, a faint spiritual force surged out of the letter of commitment. This spiritual force was quite strange. As soon as it appeared, it flew towards Yang Tian like a gust of wind and lightning, and the next moment it was suspended 5 centimeters above his head. No matter how Yang Tian moved, it followed closely. Could this be the so-called trace? It must be said that although the soul power of this trace is weak and secretive, with Yang Tian's current understanding of soul power and his terrifying soul strength, how could he not discover its existence? Such an amazing discovery instantly gave Yang Tian confidence. He quickly issued instructions to deduce the formation and cracking method of the trace thread through thread 4. But he didn't say much on the surface, but gave everyone a reassuring look. Everyone naturally understood, gritted their teeth and stamped their feet, and signed. After completing all the procedures, it seemed that it was time to leave. Yang Tian had greeted the professors and experts of various disciplines yesterday and agreed to see them again at the beginning of the school term. In an instant, the little wizard's wardrobes were empty, and the messy things filled the entire suitcase. Everyone excitedly rushed outside the Hogwarts castle. Yang Tian was still sitting on the somersault cloud with empty hands, just like when he came, but there were already 8 more figures around him. This might be his biggest gain in this school year. Chapter 240. After boarding the Hogwarts Express, Yang Tian's group of 9 wanted to find 2 nearby carriages, but were stopped by Draco. Accompanying him were the Weasley brothers, Angelina, and other new members of the study group. Seeing the scene in front of him, Yang Tian felt like he had walked into the wrong set. Is this the relationship between Slytherin and Gryffindor? Is this the relationship between the Weasley family and the Malfoy family? But before he could continue to think about it, Draco said solemnly, Yang Tian, on this return trip, I have begged my father to open the school director's carriage for us. There is no other way. A series of events that have happened recently forced us to sit down together and have a good talk. Yang Tian looked around and saw that everyone had a serious look on their faces. He immediately understood, it seemed that the large-scale mobilization of the wizarding world was no longer a secret. So he said no more, nodded slightly, and quickly followed with the group of 9. The director's carriage is located at the end of the Hogwarts Express and is equipped with a luxurious restaurant. It is naturally incomparable to the so-called prefect's carriage. However, the school director's carriage is usually hidden by magic. Only when the school director himself or the school director applies on his behalf, will the staff remove the magic protection and reveal the school director's carriage. Draco led everyone to the rear of the car with familiarity, and then pressed a black ring into the groove on the right side of the car. In the blink of an eye, the door of the car opened. Well, I have to say, this school director's car is a bit exaggerated. The space expanded by the traceless extension spell is as big as a small basketball court, with a whole Persian carpet, gorgeous crystal chandeliers, hollow carved window frames. In short, it is inhumane. Draco was in no mood to care about these things. After making sure that the door of the carriage had been locked, he said with a grim expression, Yang Tian, I have received a series of messages from my father these days. I am afraid that something big is going to happen in the wizarding world. What's the big deal? Yang Tian asked calmly. It's about the evil organization. Draco said solemnly again, according to my father's letter, there are undercurrents in the wizarding world. The black-robed wizards of the previous evil organization have appeared in Albania. Judging from their whereabouts, there is obviously a huge conspiracy. Therefore, all forces in the wizarding world are gathering and preparing to go to Albania. Hearing this, the new members looked calm. Obviously they had heard similar news from Draco a long time ago, but the group of 9 did not look surprised at all. Obviously, they had also received the news a long time ago. Yang Tian, you are still hiding everything from us. It was Elena who spoke, and her tone was indescribably resentful. Looking at the new members around, they all had the same expression. Ah! Yang Tian responded with a guilty conscience. Didn't you agree last time that you wouldn't hide it from us anymore and that we would advance and retreat together? Elena said unyieldingly. Yang Tian smiled bitterly and said, the situation this time is very special. To be honest, I didn't plan to bring you with me, including them. As he spoke, he pointed to the other 8 old members. That's not right. Hermione immediately refused to listen. Didn't you say before that you would give us a chance to challenge you? As long as we can join forces to defeat you, we can go. Upon hearing this, the old members also echoed. Defeat me first. Yang Tian said with a confident smile. In that case, if we can defeat you, can we participate in this operation? George instantly grasped the key point and asked excitedly. Yes, if we can defeat you, we will get the same treatment. Of course, we don't have to fight with all of us, we can just fight you one-on-one. Angelina also hurriedly bargained. The other new members also hurriedly agreed. But at this moment, Elena asked pointedly, stop arguing, tell me how to solve the problem of Zongxi first. What is trace thread? Padma was a little confused. The contract you signed before leaving school is actually a contract magic. After you sign the contract, a trace will always follow you. When you use magic in an area where muggles live, in front of muggles, or when someone around you uses magic, the Office of Prohibition of Abuse of Magic will be notified immediately. Elena explained seriously, believe me, the punishment for violating this regulation is very severe. You will receive a warning letter for the first use, and you will be expelled for the second use. So that's how it is, but how do you know so much detail? Hannah asked in surprise. You seem to have forgotten that my father works in the Office for the Prohibition of the Abuse of Magic. It's not surprising to know this, right? At the last banquet, the friends had all seen the government official who had an aristocratic air but was taciturn. The friends were completely silent. With their hearts beating, they looked at Yang Tian as usual, waiting for his decision. Okay, let's not say those hypocritical words. I'm trying to figure out a way to deal with Zongxi's matter. I believe it won't be a big problem. Yang Tian's first words excited his friends, but that's not what I want to say. Let me put it this way, I decided to get involved the moment I got the news. But for you, it's hard for me to make up my mind. Unlike before, the risk of this battle is actually very high. We have no idea how many masters the mysterious organization will send out. And from the news we have received from the Free family, the situation is not very optimistic. So, this is not a game, but a real war, and it is a war with an unpredictable outcome. I can no longer guarantee anyone's safety. In other words, anyone may lose his life in Albania. So, according to my true thoughts, I hope everyone can stay and not get involved. Yang Tian said sincerely. But your choice is to participate in this war. Fred said unwillingly. Yes, because I believe in my own strength. I have the ability to play a role in this war. Yang Tian said confidently. Then I can certainly play a role as well. Angelina said impatiently. Elena also regained her cold expression and snorted. After all, she was about to be in the 7th grade, so no matter how weak she was, she should be stronger than a young boy, right? Oh! Yang Tian looked at the two of them with a smile and said, do you want to try it? As he spoke, the ancient magic wand appeared in his hand. Angelina was suddenly filled with pride when she heard this. Without saying a word, she drew out her wand. You two come together, don't waste time. Yang Tian looked at Elena and said. Haha, I'll make you cry soon. Elena felt provoked, but she did not refute. Instead, she drew out her wand. Seeing this, Everyone hurriedly retreated, leaving enough space for the three of them.